Chapter 330. Luo Nan understood tacitly when he saw Worker Zhai cast a gaze at him. Let me try. Hey. I'm using a penetrating strength. But Cragburst didn't let go. He was a bit unconvinced, but he was still wary on a deeper level. You tell me first. Let's not talk about Nanster. I don't seem to be much worse than Shuele. If he can activate the effects, why can't I? Worker Zhai responded warmly, I'm thinking about it. There are two reasons. First, my amplification device is more suited to mental ability users. You are a typical fleshly body enhanced. Your interference direction is different. Second, this miniature rhombohedron is perhaps more like our wristbands. Daily usage is one layer, developer options are another layer. Cragburst rubbed his big bald head. He felt that what Worker Zhai said made some sense. He cast his gaze at Luo Nan, who nodded. Worker Zhai's operation just now was extremely precise and meticulous. His mental strength borrowed the minute electric current of the device to realize the amplification of interference on the material plane. But when it came to you, Brother Cragburst, the amplification device's effects were completely destroyed. So it's like this. Cragburst nodded. When he looked at Worker Zhai, his gaze was a bit different. Is it electron affinity? This ability is quite good. It's especially suited for maintenance. It's like adding wings to a tiger. Which place doesn't need electricity nowadays? Worker Zhai laughed involuntarily. It's not suited. It's necessary. I'm a mental ability user. If I can't realize electron affinity, then further research would be wishful thinking. As he spoke, he cast his gaze at Luo Nan. His thoughts were rather complicated. I don't even dare to think about Mr. Luo's eyesight. We amateurs who haven't entered the door are truly left in the dust when compared to the awakened. Well, Nanster is a special case. As Cragburst spoke, he made room for Luo Nan. He added, I feel like I've seen this toy somewhere before. Luo Nan didn't speak. He took a step forward and grasped the metal rod. When Cragburst let go, the tentacles of the miniature rhombohedron retracted. Luo Nan didn't release his power in time. He didn't make any further movements until the tentacles were completely retracted. What's wrong? Cragburst didn't understand. Probably just observing. Worker Zhai was a precision-oriented mentally enhanced. Even though he was unable to observe Luo Nan's movements on the mental plane, he was able to guess the corresponding train of thought. Cragburst said, Oh. He felt a bit embarrassed for being so suspicious of Worker Zhai just now. He pressed down on his earlobe and made a gesture for members of the society, let's add each other as friends. Worker Zhai smiled bitterly and waved his hand. I'm sorry I can't. You don't have an ID on the psychic wave network? There's one, but it's hard to use. Worker Zhai shook his head again. I do have some mental strength, but it's not enough to interfere with reality at any time. That's why I've only been able to wander around the periphery of the circle these past few years, relying on my craftsmanship to make a living. Fortunately, Papercut took care of me and often introduced me to some work. There was no doubt that Luo Nan had been introduced in this manner. Cragburst said in surprise, It can't be that bad? I can see that your interference force is on point. That's in this studio. Outside of here, I'm no different from an ordinary person. Worker Zhai glanced at Luo Nan. He saw that Luo Nan still hadn't made a move, so he turned his head back and said, Papercut has put in quite a bit of effort. He's tried to help me with the awakening ritual, but I'm limited by my talent. I've only gained a bit of an affinity with electrons over the past 5 years. I'm still far from being able to do anything else. I need to rely on a hearing aid in order to use the Hexier and access the psychic wave network. Right now, I've only reached the 2nd level. I can only watch television, listen to the radio, and so on. I have no way of interacting with others. A hearing aid? Did you design it yourself? Cragburst was able to understand that this was a type of amplification device. He was a bit curious. The people of the society, as long as they're involved in mechanical and electronic design, amplification devices have always been a hot topic. The larger the measurement, the better. You're talking about the 4-dimensional measurement. Worker Zhai was a technician. He always paid attention to similar theories. Right when he was about to discuss a thing or two with Cragburst, Luo Nan suddenly let out a long breath. His palm left the metal rod. The miniature rhombohedron was still in its initial state within the device's chamber. Compared to Worker Zhai and Cragburst's progress, it was a complete and utter regression. Shuele, who was watching from afar, didn't participate in the conversation between Cragburst and Worker Zhai. He focused on observing Luo Nan's methods from beginning to end. But the more he watched, the more disappointed he became. Master, is it no good? I want to take it out and give it a try. Luo Nan turned his head to look at Worker Zhai. This device won't be of much help to me. The direction of its amplification is mainly in strength. I feel that it would be better to go a bit deeper. Depth, strength, sensitivity, and affinity. These were the four-dimensional measurement that Worker Zhai had just mentioned. They were the four basic measurement standards that the society used for mental strength. There wasn't any particularly rigorous logic or scientific basis in these measurements. They were mainly established by common usage, reflecting the fuzziness of the research of supernatural powers in the current era. Worker Zhai didn't have any objections. My specialty is in electronic equipment and mechanical design. I'm considering the internal structure of this thing. As for the mental domain, you have the final say. He opened the device chamber as he spoke, and the miniature rhombohedron was mounted on the support. It moved out and stopped at the outer edge of the workbench. Luo Nan gave it a few more glances and asked, Worker Zhai, you just said that just the kinetic energy conversion structure isn't enough. You mean? From the situation shown in the video, there are at least two structures that aren't shown: maglev and energy storage. Also, I want to know where the power components are located. Worker Zhai casually drew several structural sketches on the hologram, corresponding to the kinetic energy conversion structure. From a conventional train of thought, the miniature rhombohedron is more like an integrated circuit. It's not a problem to use it in electronic equipment, but what kind of work is needed to drive the several 100-kilogram Tai Chi ball? Those tentacles are a good choice. It's fine as long as the transmission and work parts are combined together. But I haven't discovered the corresponding structural design. Luo Nan had a general understanding. What Worker Zhai means is that there should be more tentacles to form more structures. Worker Zhai used an electronic pen to tap the hologram. Dynamic, precise, and sufficiently firm. Cragburst listened to them speak, and a certain train of thought from before resurfaced. It became clearer and clearer, separated only by a thin layer of paper. He rubbed his forehead forcefully. Tentacles, structure, precision. What's that again? Luo Nan laughed and asked, in other words, the miniature rhombohedron driving the Tai Chi ball is very likely to be accomplished through those tentacles? Worker Zhai nodded, and Cragburst clapped his hands forcefully. Holy crap! The dynamo core. Luo Nan didn't say anything more. He took a deep breath, and his towering iceberg-like mental strength resonated with the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Incorporeal lightning crackled and scuttled, forming a seemingly substantial bolt of lightning in the depths of the cracks in his eyes. The miniature rhombohedron inexplicably trembled at the focus of his gaze. This object couldn't compare to the external neuron. It couldn't compare to Jack's Deep Sea Type 4, but the sparkle on the mental plane and the corresponding spark of lightning in Luo Nan's eyes truly belonged to the dynamo core. Chapter 332. 6 tentacles extended out from the miniature rhombohedron within the workshop, followed by a second layer. This time the tentacles were even more slender. There were 6 main trunks and 30 secondary branches. The scale was already far above the core rhombohedron. Several dozen tentacles undulated and fluttered. If one did not have a predetermined view, it was likely that they would have overlooked the existence of the rhombohedron. The current situation was no different from the situation in the device chamber. At most, the tentacles extended a bit more. It was just that the 3 people in the workshop were much more serious than before. Luo Nan squinted his eyes, adjusting the glow of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Cragburst shifted his feet lightly to adjust the angle of the heart lantern. As for Worker Zhai, he brought a portable microscope with him. He switched lenses from time to time, searching for a suitable focal length. Are there any changes? Shuelei was limited by his long-range view. He was unable to distinguish the details clearly. He blinked a dozen times, but he was unable to see anything. In the end, Worker Zhai gave a response. He said, "Wait a moment." He took a piece of tin foil from the workbench and rolled it into a strip. He carefully extended it over, using the tip to streak across the empty region of the tentacle structure. The tip of the tin foil was soon obstructed, and it bent a bit. Under the illumination of the workshop's lights, a thin stream of light streaked across the empty region. It was unremarkable, but it was still captured by the others. There's something. Shuelei immediately understood. It was very likely that there was an even finer structure in the empty region of the tentacle structure. However, its composition had already surpassed the limits of what the naked eye could see. Worker Zhai slowly pulled back the tin foil, but the tip of the tin foil inexplicably tore as soon as he pulled back his elbow. It was as if an invisible blade had sliced through it. The front half of the tin foil first broke off and then it shattered. During this period, it could be seen that the 36 tentacles didn't have any obvious changes. Instead, a subtle trembling sound rang out in the workshop. The source was from the tentacle structure. Careful. Careful. Crag burst pressed down with his hands, indicating for Worker Zhai to take it gently. Worker Zhai thought for a moment and simply flicked the second half of the tin foil toward the top of the tentacle structure, letting it fall freely. As expected, the tin foil tumbled a few times in midair. Before it could make contact with any of the visible tentacles, it was crushed into powder by the invisible strangulation. The sound of breathing had disappeared from the workshop, and the trembling sound of the tentacle structure grew clearer. Worker Zhai turned to look at Luo Nan. Luo Nan's gaze still lingered on the rhombohedron. Worker Zhai spoke softly, "Did you see it?" Crag burst curled his lips. "You're just showing off your superior spirit, dog die." Beside him, Worker Zhai smiled bitterly. From this point of view, he, an unawakened spiritually enhanced individual, was worse than a dog. Fortunately, after choosing the engineering specialization route, he could rely on the assistance of equipment and he could do more. A series of cracking sounds rang out from beneath the workbench. A circle of white boards rose up in a slanted manner, looking like a coarse calyx. The tentacle structure was half enclosed within, forcing Luo Nan and Crag burst to retreat. Several spotlights lit up above, adjusting their angles so that the light could penetrate the visible and invisible tentacle structure and cast a shadow on the whiteboard. F***ck me. Crag burst was caught off guard. On the snow-white board, there seemed to be thousands of snakes wriggling, constantly changing according to the angle of the light. They could see clearly now. Through the special light projection, the 36 strands, which were thinner than strands of hair, became thumb-thick on the board. And between them, a densely packed shadow spider web was woven. Thus, everyone confirmed that there was a layer of even finer strands that couldn't be seen with the naked eye between the two layers of 36 strands. The strands were densely woven like a web, forming an even more complex and precise structure. Worker Zhai operated the computer and cut the shadow spider web from multiple angles together. It didn't take long for a relatively complete 3D structure to be formed. It appeared on the workbench in the form of a projection. Luo Nan's gaze went back and forth between the real thing and the 3D projection. Crag burst couldn't see through it, so he simply asked, "How many strands are there in total?" "The current count is 1,276 strands." Worker Zhai swept his eyes over the data and then sighed, "The structure just now needs to be completely replaced. There's also the material analysis. The resources allocated to me may not be enough. They may not be suitable either." Crag burst didn't understand. "What?" "There's a supercomputer here in the Electronic City. Its name is Crossover. With my privileges, I can request a portion of the resources. Actually, I'm using it right now. Its main purpose is to analyze the dynamic structure." Worker Zhai pointed at the holographic screen. Page after page of diagrams flashed by at high speed. They were all structural diagrams extracted from the shadow spider web that had just been confirmed. Over 1,000 diagrams had flashed by in the time Worker Zhai spoke. "Looks pretty fast, huh? You can't provide effective parameters, so you can only rely on the method of exhaustion. It's meaningless. This is because it's impossible for the computer to understand how a glass-like object can split into over 1,000 tentacles of varying thicknesses, far surpassing the size of its storage capacity. These tentacles are in a state when they're coiled up, and how they function when they're released." Worker Zhai sighed when he spoke to this point, especially when the stimulating factor involves the mental plane. If this is the case, the mainstream engineering of humanity isn't ready yet. I'm powerless to do anything for the time being. Shui Lei let out a sigh, a little disappointed. Crag burst shook his big bald head and sighed along with Worker Zhai. However, his mentality was more stable than everyone else's. He turned to look at Luo Nan. "It's a big discovery. What do you think? Should we transfer it to the society to take a look?" Luo Nan didn't respond immediately. He just asked Worker Zhai, "Can I put it away now?" Worker Zhai was actually a bit reluctant, but he couldn't find a reason to refuse. He just nodded with a bitter smile. Luo Nan closed his eyes slightly, isolating the effects of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. The 3 layers of over 1,000 tentacles, whether they were tangible or intangible, all retracted back. The volume of the miniature rhombohedron didn't show any obvious changes. Worker Zhai couldn't be bothered to tidy up his workbench. He operated the portable microscope with one hand and moved closer to the miniature rhombohedron. He clicked his tongue in wonder. Luonan moved to the side and Cragburst understood. The two walked to the side and conversed in low voices. What's the difference between Jack's Deep Sea Type 4 and this one? Is it also a 3-layer structure that extends little by little? 3 layers? I don't understand this. I only skimmed through the report. Cragburst did his best to recall, but he was unable to grasp the gist of it. In the end he simply said, just contact the branch's laboratory. You're one of the parties involved and your operation score is near the top. You certainly have the right to access and consult. It's fine as long as you don't leak it. That's how it is. Not many people cared in the past. Yeah, not many people cared. Luonan curled his lips. Cragburst was a bit embarrassed. Leaking on all sides was a tradition of the society, and Luonan was the newest victim of this tradition. As such, he couldn't help but be a bit hesitant. Let the branch's laboratory handle this. You'll certainly need to explain the ins and outs of this matter. Is that okay? Leister, what's your opinion? Luonan looked at Shuele. Shuele was a bit hesitant. Shuele didn't understand the significance of the dynamo core, but he could see that this toy was far from simple. He didn't expect that repairing the device would cause complications, and that the implications weren't small. Don't think too much about it. The prophet is the gym master. Listen to his opinion. Luonan saw that Shuele was in a difficult position, so he simply declared, this is the gym master's personal property. We stole it from the Daoguan. Even if we did it out of good intentions, we would leak our privacy. How would we explain this to the gym master later? Shuele let out a breath of relief and nodded over and over. Luonan looked at Cragburst and Worker Zhai. Cragburst made a zipping motion with his mouth, while Worker Zhai had just recovered from his research state. He laughed and said, protecting the privacy of our customers is a basic principle of technicians. Then that's good. Luonan nodded to express his thanks. Shuele asked again, should I tell the gym master now? Luonan hesitated for a moment. His gaze cast toward the miniature rhombohedron, and then he turned to look at the 3-dimensional projection and the simplified diagram that appeared on the holographic screen. A long time passed before he opened his mouth, but he gave an irrelevant answer. This diagram? I don't understand it. Ha! The other 3 were a bit stupefied. Luonan took a step forward and swiped his hand across the holographic screen, looking at the simplified diagram that had already been swept past. Under the deduction of the allocated supercomputer resources, the structural diagram of the dynamo core appeared endlessly and was revised. From a layman's point of view, it was concise, but the corresponding professional symbols were like heavenly books. It was hard to understand. He originally wanted to use his habitual thinking methods of coupling, configuration, and so on to deconstruct it. But a few thoughts ran through his mind and he gave up for now. He turned his head and asked, Worker Zhai, these diagrams are too professional. Can you teach me a bit? Which parts? All of them. Worker Zhai was a bit startled, but he soon laughed. It's a long story. The frequency at which Luonan's fingers swiped was far from being able to keep up with the speed of the supercomputer's analysis. It didn't take long for Luonan to give up, allowing the simple diagrams to sweep past. But the thoughts that popped up before became clearer and more stable. I want to learn from the beginning. I've always been mediocre in physics. I don't even need to talk about electronic engineering and mechanical design. It would naturally be best if I could make up for it. Worker Zhai looked a few more times, and he suddenly realized that the society member before him, who had already reached a higher level, was still a student. He skimmed over the relevant information. His age of 16 was very eye-catching. What year are you in high school this year? First year. You're interested in engineering? It's useful. Luonan was very frank. He started from a completely practical point of view. I want to understand these structural diagrams. I need to have a concept at the very least. Worker Zhai shook his head and emphasized once more, I can't do it in a short amount of time. On the other side, Cragburst had already been tripped by Luonan's train of thought. He simply rolled his eyes. Weren't we discussing confidentiality issues? You even said that you wanted to confess to that gym master Shio and be lenient. After it's fixed. Luonan cut off Cragburst's words and looked at Shuele. The gym master has a strange temper. I can't predict what kind of reaction he will have. If I ask him in a muddle-headed manner, we might not be able to talk. Leister, let's keep this a secret for now. Wait for me to figure out the reasoning behind this, then we'll return it to its owner, okay? Okay. Shuelei was actually stupefied, especially when he looked directly into Luo Nan's eyes. Even though Luo Nan's eyes were separated by a layer of contact lenses, and even though the photoelectric signal was transmitted and restored, Luo Nan's gaze was still blazing to the point of terror. He had never seen Luo Nan like this in his memories. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Cragburst raised his hands in an attempt to calm Luo Nan down. You said you're going to fix it. How are you going to fix it? And you're going to find the branch's laboratory? This is a contradiction. Let me tell you, even the branch's laboratory might not be able to grasp the relevant technology. Luo Nan didn't speak. He just swept his gaze across the room from Worker Zhai to Cragburst to Shuelei and then to his own hands. Everyone had a share. Chapter 333. Cragburst was stupefied when Luo Nan's gaze swept over him, but he quickly came to a realization. He immediately shrunk back. Don't talk about self-reliance. Helping each other won't do either. That's what you spiritual dogs should do. I'm a muscle type. You might as well let me kill my way into the headquarters. Luo Nan wasn't counting on him. He laughed and shifted his gaze. Worker Zhai, I'll have to trouble you with this matter. Worker Zhai opened his mouth, but in the end he could only shake his head and smile bitterly. He had already expressed his helplessness on this matter many times. He was not being courteous, but had come to the final conclusion after evaluating the resources and technology involved. How could it be solved with just a please? He heard Luo Nan speak again. I know that I can't be impatient, and I never thought that I would see results in a month or two. I want to take this opportunity to ask you to help me lay the foundation. Luo Nan wasn't someone who was good with words. He stopped speaking at this point and saw that Worker Zhai didn't refuse on the spot. Luo Nan followed his train of thought and continued, I'm also on the mentally enhanced side. I'm also on the precision path. Brother Papercut also said that I should naturally get involved in the maintenance profession. I'll learn from you and you'll teach me. We can even exchange pointers. Cragburst saw that Luo Nan was having a hard time organizing his words. He couldn't help but speak up. You guys just happen to learn from each other? These words reminded Worker Zhai of something. His eyes lit up as he realized that this 16-year-old high school student was already an official member of the society. In terms of mental cultivation, he was definitely far above him. Luo Nan was able to have such accomplishments at such a young age. Aside from his peerless talent, Luo Nan should have quite a set of cultivation techniques. At the very least, Luo Nan's was much stronger than his wild fox Zen. In this way, not only would they be able to learn from each other, they would also be able to exchange what they need. He had spent many years outside the entrance of the association. Although he was open-minded, it was still a burden on his mind. Now that there was a new opportunity, Worker Zhai could not help but be tempted. But when he looked at the complicated structure of the shadow spider web and the thousands of diagrams on the screen, he felt a dull pain in his head. Agreeing to Luo Nan's request was easy, but Luo Nan's ultimate goal was still the dynamo core. Luo Nan didn't even have a basic direction for this. It wasn't his style to deceive himself and others. Worker Zhai unconsciously sighed again. Luo Nan knew that Worker Zhai's state of mind had changed somewhat, but there was still a hurdle in the bottom of his heart that could not be overcome. He thought for a moment and walked to the workbench. I heard you say that you're missing parameters, right? Worker Zhai's mind was in a mess. He took off his portable microscope and gently pinched the space between his eyebrows. Actually, it's a problem with the direction of research. The conversion of kinetic energy was only the simplest step. How to store it, how to do the work, and how to present it in such a precise structure. There are too many things involved. I don't know much about engineering, but if you want to talk about direction, I suggest this as a starting point. Do you have a pen? Luo Nan asked for a digital pen as he spoke. He drew a diagram on the 3D projection area on the shadow spiderweb. With years of experience in sketching, the electronic pen's glowing lines were smooth and smooth. With just a few arcs, it drew a ball at the front of the thickest tentacle. Then, the tip of the pen cut the surface of the sphere, drawing a tetrahedron. Then, at the outer edge, sticking to the end of the tetrahedron, he drew an even larger sphere. Worker Zhai saw the entire process of Luo Nan's operation clearly. He also saw the diagram Luo Nan drew clearly. He was immediately stupefied. Sphere. Tetrahedron. Sphere. 3 diagrams. They were nested layer by layer. Their relationships were clear, and the areas where the diagrams connected and covered overlapped a great deal with the 3-layered tentacle structure of the dynamo core. It was not a rigid correspondence, but there was a sense of harmony that was pleasing to the eye. In the field of engineering, simple feelings were unreliable, but feelings were often the precursor to success. Archetype format? Crag burst blurted out, but then he quickly corrected himself under Luo Nan's blazing gaze. Formatting theory. What a coincidence. It's quite a coincidence. There's no harm in giving it a try. Luo Nan did not understand mechanical design, but he knew that when it came to the dynamo core, he would be pleasantly surprised if he used formatting theory. This point had already been proven by Jack. He threw down the digital pen and turned around. Worker Zhai, this is what I'm thinking. There's no harm in giving it some more thought. We can keep in touch at any time. Worker Zhai's gaze was glued to the 3D diagram. He reckoned that he would not be able to remove it for a while. Luo Nan and Crag burst bid their farewells and left. They did not take the hovering target when they left. The miniature rhombohedron was also left behind. Worker Zhai had no objections to this. Basically, they had already reached an agreement to cooperate. It could be foreseen that this agreement would last for quite a long time. Even with formatting theory as a reference, it was absolutely not a simple task to completely see through the mysteries of the dynamo core. Shuelei hung up the call. He was having a headache about how to hide this matter for a longer period of time. As for Luo Nan, he sat in the SUV with his brows furrowed in deep thought. Crag burst could not help but ask, "Where are we going now?" "The branch's laboratory." We're going to the Shangding building?" Luo Nan came back to his senses. "What I mean is that I need the branch's laboratory's research materials related to the dynamo core. All of them. I also need to follow up on the follow-up progress." "What's there to ponder about? Just directly read it. And then I'll be watched and monitored?" Crag burst grinned. Reading the materials wasn't a problem, but according to Luo Nan's words, he needed to follow up on the research. He needed to be deeply involved. This could indeed attract the attention of people with ulterior motives. Then let's switch things up again. Let Secretary He help. It'll be done in a few minutes. An intermediary company is fine too. Speaking of which, those intermediary agents and whatnot have been suppressed quite miserably. Secretary He is quite skilled at finding entry points. The so-called intermediaries and agents were some internal members of the society. They were hired by external powers. They relied on their membership privileges to resell the society's internal resources. After the operation against Jack last time, a few intermediaries were commissioned by Quantum Corporation to buy back the relevant equipment at a high price. They bought back nearly all of the seized equipment. Crag burst still didn't feel that reading the materials was difficult. His train of thought diverged as he said, "A while ago, a bunch of intermediaries were fiercely raising the price of the dynamo core. Now they've all stopped. I heard that the financial backer behind them has changed? I'm talking about Quantum Corporation?" "Not right now." Luo Nan shook his head. The financial backer Crag burst was talking about was Luo Nan's old friend Yen Yonghua. Yen Yonghua hadn't been having a good time recently. He flew back and forth between Xia City and Luo City, transforming into a flying man. Even so, his position in the company was still on the verge of collapse. The enemy's situation was unstable. This alleviated some of the pressure on Luo Nan. Crag burst still didn't know where Luo Nan wanted to go after talking for a long time. He was just about to ask again when a call came through on the psychic wave network. "Ying? I'm on duty today." "That's right. Boss Luo's personal bodyguard? He's right next to me." Crag burst spoke a few words before transferring the call to the SUV's portable multimedia system. The control panel lit up, and the upper body of Zhang Yingying's image appeared. Zhang Yingying was dressed in tight-fitting clothes. There was a bit of sweat on her forehead and a few strands of hair stuck to her hair. A snow-white towel hung from her neck. She was the same as Shuelei from before. She had undergone a large amount of exercise. She waved at Luo Nan and beamed, "Hello, Boss Luo. Are you interested in swapping pointers? Let me experience your heart lantern of the eye's orifice." Next time. Luo Nan gave a simple answer. Zhang Yingying's invitation lacked sincerity. She waved her hand and ignored it. She changed the subject. "There's something I wanted to talk to you about on Monday. Since we bumped into each other, I'll mention it. There's money to be made. Do you want it?" Luo Nan frowned. "What money?" Zhang Yingying raised an eyebrow. "The money to buy the Devil Ray. Don't tell me you've collected enough." Luo Nan was very frank. "I haven't found a way yet." "Really?" Zhang Yingying laughed even more happily. "I'll give you a chance to do odd jobs. Do you want it?" "Odd jobs? Earn 60 million by doing odd jobs?" Luonan didn't say anything. He just looked at Zhang Yingying with cold eyes. Zhang Yingying was dissatisfied. What kind of look is that? No one's scamming you. Our company recently expanded our business, but we don't have enough manpower. We haven't had any capable newcomers recently, so we want to subcontract out a few. The pay is quite generous. Even if we can't fill your hole, we can still make up for it. Be frank. Do you agree or not? Give me a reply. Crag burst laughed from the side. You need to sign up for a project when doing business. What if it's a gigolo, a princess, or something like that? Do we accept it or not? Zhang Yingying grinned in amusement. She didn't get angry. She turned her head and shouted, Boss, Crag Burst said that you went to a nightclub to sell. Holy crap. Crag Burst's majestic body instantly shrunk twice. He hated that he couldn't stuff himself under the driver's seat. Even Luonan instinctively leaned back a bit. Zhang Yingying laughed loudly. Of course, Her Majesty Empress Wu wasn't by her side, but the effect was still excellent. Crag Burst came back to his senses and immediately cursed, You're just a fox exploiting the tiger's might. A fox is so pretty. Zhang Yingying's hands extended to the top of her head. She held her index and middle fingers together, and she nimbly crooked them twice. Crag Burst spat, You're a freaking rabbit. Luonan couldn't help but grin. Zhang Yingying winked at Luonan. She beamed as she sent Luonan some information. This is the details of our subcontracted business. Time is tight. Hurry up and give us a reply. Alright. The boss also wanted me to tell you that thanks to you, she's had quite a few social engagements recently. She's earned quite a bit of quick money. And there are people chasing after her. You're welcome. The smile on Luonan's face faded as he spoke. Zhang Yingying was clearly saying that quite a few people were trying to get Her Majesty Empress Wu's tacit approval from within the Xia City branch. This was within Luonan's expectations. Hey, aren't you worried? What's the point of worrying? People's hearts don't grow in my stomach. Crag Burst coughed. Yingying probably wants you to go pay your respects and recognize her as your godmother. Go die. Zhang Yingying gave him the middle finger in a straightforward manner. You won't even be able to find the door if the boss doesn't speak. Then she gave Luonan a smile. Relax. Relax. Don't let your imagination run wild. Don't frown all day long. The boss and the president are watching. Headquarters won't be able to play their tricks a second time. As for making money, that's even easier. We ability users just need to find the right path. We can make money lying down. Crag Burst blurted out, Then we're still selling? Chapter 334. Zhang Yingying didn't talk for too long. She chatted with them for a bit before hanging up. The information she sent arrived at this time. Luonan looked it up through the hexier while Crag Burst smacked the steering wheel and laughed mischievously. This sister is too noisy. Of course she has a good heart. Luonan understood what he meant and nodded. I know. The first time he met Zhang Yingying, she was certainly quick-witted and lively, but she had a temperament that never gave way to others. She wouldn't give up until she seized the upper hand. But not only did she give Crag Burst the opportunity to talk about her just now, she even put on a self-mocking attitude, stirring up the atmosphere quite lively. Luonan couldn't help but laugh when he thought of Zhang Yingying's finger curling. But his smile soon vanished and he spoke softly, I seem to be quite depressed recently? Otherwise, with Zhang Yingying's temperament, why would she deliberately make him happy? Crag Burst laughed loudly, You're stressed, right? That's normal. At your age, if you're still giggling and carefree after bearing all these things, then you really need to see a doctor. Really? That's normal? Of course it's normal. Back when I was in the Coast Defense Force, every time there was a rushing tide. You know what a rushing tide is, right? It's when a large number of mutants use the astronomical spring tide as an opportunity to attack the coast defense line. It's called a landslide and a tsunami. It blots out the sky and covers the earth. Crag Burst started the car and the jeep drove out of the parking lot amidst the rumbling of the engine. It merged into the low-altitude magnetic rail of the electronic city. He continued to speak. After the warning and before the start of the battle, it's the most torturous time. There are even suicides in the barracks. A good portion of them are seasoned veterans who have experienced hundreds of battles. It's very likely that they'll survive even if they enter the battlefield. Humans have a limit to their endurance. Once the limit is exceeded, they become a freak. They're done for. But I can see that you're fine. You're far from your limit. Crag Burst extended his hand as he spoke. The distance between his thumb and middle finger was quite considerable. Luonan laughed and sighed after laughing. There are still changes. He had a feeling that his reactions were a bit different when he encountered trouble. One had to know that what had just been discovered in the electronic city was the dynamo core. His father had secretly gifted him a mystical item, the key to allowing an altered human like Jack to become a burner, the level of mysterious technology that Earth's technology had yet to reach, and it even involved the mysterious power that was hidden behind the colossus that was Quantum Corporation. If this was a month ago, he would have disregarded everything and rushed to the Taoist gym to find the gym master and ask him about it. He would have pestered him to death to get an answer. But now, even though his conviction to research the dynamo core was firm, it was still a long way to go, even if his heart was about to be torn apart by an intense desire. What? It was probably because he had some misgivings. In just a month or so, he had made enemies one after another, and they were all powerful forces in the world. After a few times, even a newborn calf's horns would be flattened. Luo Nan had a faint premonition that what awaited him in front of him was a deadly minefield. It was fine if he didn't trigger it, but once he did, he wouldn't even have the chance to turn back. Sharpening one's tools was the right choice. But on the other hand, waiting in ambush also came with a price. All sorts of thoughts couldn't help but emerge in his mind. They interweaved into a dense and gloomy net, and the pressure followed him like a shadow. Indeed, he hadn't reached his limit, but he wasn't far from being a freak. Crag Burst drove his car through the flow of traffic. He shot a glance at Luo Nan and grinned. "Nanster, I need to say a few words to you. Since you're a man, everyone has pressure. You can find ways to vent, but you can't show it on your face. Otherwise people will look down on you." Vet. Cigarettes, alcohol, women? Oh, I'm talking about learning. Turning pressure into motivation. Luo Nan copied Zhang Yingying and gave Crag Burst the middle finger. Crag Burst was a bit embarrassed. "Don't look into the minor details. What I'm saying is that we can't let the weekend go to waste. If you don't have any plans, I'll arrange a place for everyone to relax." Cigarettes, alcohol, and women? Don't be a bad kid. Crag Burst's rough voice cut off Luo Nan's thoughts. Luo Nan laughed and asked, "Where's the Trigate district?" "It's between the main city district and Man City. It's almost 200 kilometers away. Why are we going there?" "Nothing. I saw the information Yingying sent over. It says that the partner is Trigate Security LLC. They're registered in the Trigate district. I've never heard of them before." "Oh, this used to be the camp of the Xia City garrison troops. It was removed not too long ago. The security company you're talking about should have a military background." "Not bad. It's quite easy to earn money from the government and the military at this stage." "What kind of business is it?" Luo Nan read from the information. "Native species, genetic and ecological maintenance." "What?" Crag Burst didn't hear it clearly for the first time. Luo Nan repeated the information, clearly reading the relevant introduction. "It's a patrol and reconnaissance business. It's related to mutants." *CK. What a scam. Crag Burst smacked the steering wheel with force and the horn exploded. This time it was Luo Nan who didn't understand. "This business isn't good?" "It has nothing to do with business. I'm saying that as long as there's a similar business, it means that the government and the military are scamming the common people." *CK. What the hell are the garrison troops doing? Crag Burst transformed into a furious youth in an instant. Luo Nan flipped through the information and slowly came to an understanding. Native species, genetic and ecological maintenance was a long and awkward name. Using one word to describe it, it was mending the pen after the sheep is lost. The mutants that were isolated in the wilderness and the ocean would occasionally break through layers upon layers of defense due to special circumstances. They would appear within the city of Xia City. This business was responsible for searching and killing these infiltrating mutants to ensure the safety of the city. Speaking of which, there were quite a few mutants within the city of Xia City. It was quite popular for rich families to raise one or two mutants. The great Ma Basilisk that Ruewen had killed and the flying devil ray that Luo Nan had subdued were all mutants. But these mutants had all gone through strict inspection and quarantine procedures. Their negative effects were already reduced to the minimum. The fellows that had accidentally infiltrated were different. They often carried highly pathogenic bacteria. There were even some that had broken through reproductive isolation and were able to reproduce with Earth's native species for the next generation. Once the related mixed blood species spread out within the city's ecosystem, a few small mutations could lead to a great disaster under the enormous impetus of the population. The hidden destructive power of these mutants was even more astonishing than the mutants on the surface. Crag Burst reached out and patted Luo Nan on the shoulder. "The task is arduous and glorious." That's what you say when you clean up the mess of the government and the military. Luo Nan grunted but said, "It's more suitable for me." That's right. From what I remember, there aren't many who are stronger than you in reconnaissance. But this is very time-consuming and patience-consuming. Hey, that's not right, right? Crag Burst suddenly came to a realization. Luo Nan was still a student. His extracurricular studies were very arduous. How could he have the free time to run around the city with someone else? Chapter 335. In November it was said that the Arctic glaciers were melting. The weather was abnormal. A cold current flowed south, pushing the moist and cold sea winds through the city. Xia City, a coastal city, became unworthy of its name in the blink of an eye. It was as if winter had arrived a month earlier. A layer of frost had actually formed on the windows of the classroom in the morning. Fortunately, this physics class was held in a large classroom. 300 people were packed to the brim. The entire classroom was quite warm without the need for any heating equipment. Luo Nan sat in a row near the window. He was attentively listening to the lecture and taking notes. Various knowledge points, as well as their corresponding diagrams and formulas, were displayed on the standard holographic screen. They were divided into categories and arranged in a clear order. Luo Nan's serious attitude made him look like a good seedling of a gifted student. If Shuelei hadn't been classmates with Luo Nan for over a month, Shuelei might have been confused just by looking at Luo Nan's current performance. "Hey, don't you have an appointment this morning?" "It's a meeting." Luo Nan didn't even raise his head as he corrected him. "What time?" "9:30. "You're leaving after class?" "I'll go with you." "You want to skip class?" Shuelei was baffled. "How do I go if I don't skip class?" "Then I won't go. The agreement doesn't require me to show up in person." Luo Nan made Shuelei dizzy with just a few words. The bell for the end of class rang at this time, signifying the end of the first class of the morning. The lecturer indicated for a temporary break, and the classroom rumbled with voices. It suddenly became noisy. Luo Nan continued to adjust the structure of the notes on the holographic screen. The core content did not come from him. It was Worker Zhai's handwriting. It practically covered all the knowledge points of the high school level. All Luo Nan needed to do was fill in the details and do the corresponding high-intensity exercises. Needless to say, Luo Nan felt his thoughts become much clearer after a few tutoring sessions with Worker Zhai. There were some immediate results. Luo Nan was neither fast nor slow, but Shuelei was even more confused. He simply gave Luo Nan a push. "What does it mean?" "It means that you have to split your attention and become an incarnation. You have to take care of both sides." And so on and so forth. Shuelei's eyes went wide as he listened. Luo Nan finally finished adjusting the notes while he was in a daze. He stretched his back. Coincidentally, a student opened the window. The damp and cold wind poured in, clashing with the heating inside the room. It actually jolted the spirits of a few drowsy students. Luo Nan and Shuelei both turned their heads to look outside the window. Heading northeast from here, passing through the gaps between the buildings, was the wetland jungle at the end of the ash-gray clouds. Right now it was also dark over there. The colors of the sky and the landscape were mixed together, and it was hard to distinguish them at first glance. Normally Shuelei wouldn't mind looking at this scenery. But when he heard Luo Nan mention those arrangements, Shuelei couldn't help but think a bit more. It's in the forest right now, right?" "Yes, as a supervisor." Luo Nan replied without thinking. He suddenly laughed. "It's really useful." Shuelei was baffled. He looked at Luo Nan again and felt that Luo Nan's smile was quite cold. It was very awkward. Luo Nan didn't speak any further. He stood up and walked to the side of the window, gazing into the distant wetland jungle. The sky was gloomy, and the long river that cut through the forest was not visible. It was like a long gray belt, half hidden and half visible, cutting into the depths of the forest. A few water birds flapped their wings and flew up. They could be considered agile, but the scale was far from what it was a few days ago. "Mutant? OF** King Mutant. That fellow has destroyed this place. Our work will go back 10 years. When the water birds flew into the sky, a small wooden boat was sailing on the long river that cut through the forest. There were 4 people on the boat. 2 young men held wooden oars in their hands. They used the most primitive method to power the small boat. Right now they were so tired that their tongues were hanging out. They also had to endure the incessant grumbling of the old man. They wanted to jump into the river and commit suicide for a time. As for old man Wu Zuanliang, who had given them a great deal of mental pressure, he was already 90 years old this year, but his spirit was still hale and hearty. Even long periods of scientific research in the wild were as relaxed as taking a stroll. The sampling and research within the campus was unable to consume his excess energy, and this made his mouth even more idle. I can hear the noise of machinery even though I'm 2 kilometers away. This is undoubtedly pollution. Those people who issued the construction permit are all grandsons. The great upheaval a week ago had turned the ecosystem of the wetland jungle into a pot of porridge. The sudden cold wave was like adding hail to snow. It made the various departments of zoology, botany, ecology, genetics. Scholars, professors, and researchers wanted to cry but had no tears. At this time, some people who disregarded the vile situation and still carried out construction work within the jungle had undoubtedly become the target of loathing. Unfortunately, from a realistic point of view, their negative emotions were completely useless. The construction team at North Bank Gear had all kinds of documents. They held the permits of the Environmental Protection Department and the school. The construction process was also carried out in strict accordance with the relevant requirements. It was done impeccably. Wu Zhuanliang had tried to take advantage of his seniority to call the construction team to stop so as to avoid an even more fatal impact on the ecosystem of the wetland that was already on the verge of collapse. But the result left him very disappointed and very unhappy. He was unhappy and wanted to complain and vent. In any case, his wife wasn't at his side, so there was no one to reprimand. Before the 2 experimental dogs who had changed jobs went completely crazy, a tall woman wearing hunting clothes at the bow of the boat glanced back and said with a smile, "Teacher, in terms of age there's nothing wrong with them calling you grandfather. It's just that suddenly having a bunch of big nephews gives me a headache." Old man Wu pointed at her. "At such a young age, you already want to be an aunt. Why don't you find a partner?" The one old pan introduced, "That's something." "Teacher, if you can't remember, I can't remember either." The tall woman adjusted the brimmed hat on her head, and then her gaze cut to the 2 suffering experimental dogs. "Seniors, are you tired? Let's change hands?" "No need, no need." The 2 experimental dogs stuck out their tongues, shook their heads and wagged their tails, and simultaneously paddled with all their might a few times to prove that they still had strength to spare. The woman in hunting clothes didn't say anything else, and continued to chat with old man Wu. Teacher Pan hasn't been in good health recently, and often suffers from insomnia. Given her personality, she'll think too much when something happens to North Bank Gear. It's better to take advantage of this mess and finish repairing it as soon as possible, so as to avoid more trouble in the future. Hearing the student mention his wife, old man Wu smacked his lips and said, "Don't worry about salty carrots," before he didn't say anything else. However, it didn't take long for Wu Zhuanliang to look at the messy state of the jungle on both sides of the long river, and he couldn't help cursing again. Mutants are King exterminating things, and Cloud City Water Village actually does foster breeding? That dog's hit aquarium, I shouldn't. Agreed. Help. Old man Wu's chest drooped and he stomped his feet. With each word, the wooden boat rocked back and forth, threatening to capsize at any moment. The 2 experimental dogs' faces were deathly pale, and the woman in hunting attire at the bow of the boat pressed down on the brim of her hat, smiling as she watched him vent. As an old-school ecologist, Wu Zhuanliang loathed mutants to the extreme. The devastation and continuous mutation of these monsters had destroyed the ecological theory of the Third World War, practically negating all the value of his life before the age of 50. In the following 40 years he continued to make achievements, and he had numerous works to his name. The people of the world gasped in admiration at his grand feat of changing the field of research in his old age and climbing to new heights. Little did he know that his love for this field of study was about to be exhausted by the ugly and complex genes of the mutants. Acumen College's wetland jungle had been practically completely isolated from the influence of the mutants for the past few decades. It was one of the few places that could evoke the ideals of his original life. But now even this place had been ruined. Old man Wu truly felt that death was better than life. "I'm going to write a letter to the school. No, I'm going to write a letter to the municipal government. Those grandsons of Cloud City Water Village, I'm going to punish them until they go bankrupt." "If you want to write, then write," the woman in hunting attire echoed. At the same time, her gaze swept across the river shore and she said with a light laugh, "I'm actually more interested in that bald crow. With that kind of body, it's already surpassed a raven, right? I don't think a similar giant phenomenon has ever appeared before." "Which one?" When old man Wu turned his head to look, the large black-winged bird circling in the air had already disappeared into the depths of the forest, disappearing without a trace. It just so happened that the river curved at this moment, and the forest ahead was sparse. Another part of the lake had opened up, and one could faintly see gears standing on the north shore. It was covered in rust. When he truly saw the building, Old Man Wu, who had previously been muttering curses, became silent. He looked for a long time before turning his face and asking about the crow. "Did you get a picture?" "It was sent to my mailbox. Teacher, I have an appointment, so I have to leave early today." Oh, you mentioned it yesterday. Go, there's nothing to do right now anyway. Oh, the four sides of this place aren't touching. Let young deer and the others row a bit more. The two experimental dogs' hearts were filled with tears, but they still had to agree. Yeah, it's a bit. Let's row a bit more. Just go straight to the shore. It's impossible for teachers' students to get lost in the forest. Old Man Wu laughed heartily. A moment later, the wooden boat neared the shore. The woman in hunting attire gracefully leapt ashore, and the small boat moved forward, pulling apart the distance. Old Man Wu shouted, "Let's go home and eat tonight." "No need, someone's taking care of our meals." The woman in hunting attire waved her hand, turned around and entered the forest, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Old Man Wu sat back on the boat and turned his head to look at the gear building on the opposite shore. He sighed and patted the side of the boat. "Control the speed. Don't forget to take samples." In the span of a few days, the North Shore gear, which had burned quite a large area, had already more or less recovered from its exterior appearance. The overall feeling of having been scoured by time made it not require too much of an external appearance. The current project was mainly the installation and remodeling of the internal equipment. On the day of headquarters operation, the destruction caused by that damn tank had practically razed the central control room to the ground. When the Devil Ray had put out the fire, the water cannon it had released had also caused a large area of electrical circuit damage. All kinds of pipelines had to be buried anew. The construction workers and technicians were carrying equipment in and out. It was a scene of work in full swing. The bald crow flapped its wings to cushion its fall. It steadily landed on the railing of a viewing platform at the top of the building. From this position, it could see the figures of people entering and exiting the building. It could also see some areas inside the building through the glass. Inside the building, there was a construction worker pushing a high-precision imaging instrument. He openly walked around each floor of the building. From time to time, people would come over and input data obtained from other locations, continuously adjusting the parameters and establishing a database that might be even more detailed than the design blueprints. The scope and intensity of the construction workers' work, when converted to value, already far exceeded the remuneration they received from the school. Chapter 336. It was 9:15 in the morning. The second morning class of Acumen College had already begun. The surrounding schools were more or less the same. The students, who were the main consumers, were bound to the campus. The streets of the large living area were relatively deserted. There were only magnetic rails extending out at low altitudes. Flying cars streaked past from time to time. Acumen College was located in the Pingjiang district. It could compete for the throne of the lowest average building height in Xia City. Even though Cloud City Water Village had a super tall building complex in the center, it only made the surrounding environment seem shorter and flatter. The crow flapped its wings and skillfully streaked through the gaps between the surrounding buildings. It soon locked onto the entrance to an underground parking lot. Taking advantage of the pedestrians not noticing, it practically stuck to the top of the doorway and flew in. It twisted left and right and soon arrived at the underground third floor. It found its final target amidst the hundreds of parked cars. Amidst the flapping of its wings, the crow landed on the roof of a commoner's SUV. Its jet-black claws lightly knocked and the sunroof immediately opened, swallowing the crow inside. The car was filled with the aroma of beef. In the driver's seat, a robust middle-aged man held a bag of freshly baked roast beef. He directly stuffed a piece of maroon meat into his mouth. The enormous crow entered the car. When it retracted its wings, it smacked the man's head. He didn't even raise his head. He was very focused. The man's skin was red. This kind of skin color was quite common among Caucasians, but it felt a bit sickly on an Asian. He had a tuft of beard on his chin. It looked like an artist's beard, but it was placed on his face. It looked very crude. The crow sized up this person with curiosity. Then it stood in the front passenger seat. Its claws hooked onto the seat cushion. It stood quite steadily. Its enormous bird body already exceeded 70 centimeters. It stood in the front passenger seat at about the same height as a normal person sitting. The man turned his head to look after swallowing most of the meat in his mouth. He met the crow's jet-black pupils and went, "Oh." He freed a hand and rummaged through the storage box in the middle of the car. He took out a box and tilted the food packaging, pretending to pour it into the box. Want to eat? If you want, I'll share some with you. This must be someone in the same trade. Otherwise, why would he treat a crow like this? This enormous crow was none other than Luo Nan's pet. It was also Luo Nan's earliest believer, Ink. Right now Luo Nan and Ink shared a view. He could control it, so Ink shook its head. If you don't want to eat, then forget it. The man stuffed another piece of roasted beef into his mouth and chewed hard. Then he reached out and grabbed a rubber band-like object from the center console. He put it on his index finger and shook it. It was obvious that the material was flexible and had a purplish-red luster. It was very eye-catching. Lift your leg. Luo Nan was very cooperative. He sent the command to Ink and Ink jumped a bit. It raised a claw crookedly. The man used 2 fingers to pull open the rubber band and wrapped it around Ink's shins. Immediately he tightened the band against the skin. With the claws blocking the lower part, it wouldn't fall off. There was a purplish-red circle around Chimo's foot, which was also quite eye-catching. From what Ink could sense, it didn't seem to be affected at all. As the man chewed on the meat, he mumbled, "This gadget is specially made. It's a communication device. It's very simple to use and it's more suitable for you psychics. You'll know once you try it." A communicator strapped to his leg? Luo Nan pierced it with his mental strength, but there was no response. Then he interfered with the material plane a bit, immediately triggering a mechanism. The rubber band trembled slightly, sending out a corresponding signal. "Hello, hello?" There was no sound in the car. The middle-aged man in the driver's seat tapped his ears. "I hear you." So this was how it could be used. It was indeed quite convenient and effortless. Luo Nan reckoned that even if he didn't comprehend the coupling technique, he would still be able to realize external communication by relying on the paper-blowing interference power from before. Right now there was only one question. Luo Nan asked through the communication rubber band, "Isn't it a bit roundabout? You can use the hexear, right?" Luo Nan still remembered the last time he and Cragburst acted together. The two used the hexear to communicate without hindrance on the psychic wave network. They were able to seamlessly connect to the society's large operation. Why did they need to open a new communication channel? That's your communication network. I can't reach it. In addition, your partner hasn't joined the society. That's all. Partner? Then you. Oh, what's your name, Master? My surname is Jean. Master Jean? Fourth tone. Good Jiang Jean. You can just call me Old Jean. In any case, I'm just a driver. Luo Nan felt that this person was a bit emotional. Perhaps his situation was similar to Worker Zhai's. He was a person within the circle, but he wasn't an awakened. It was normal for him to be a bit jealous. In any case, this person was a hired employee of the hidden indigo firm. Luo Nan didn't need to worry about his mental state. Zhang Yingying had played such a trick. She had Luo Nan hide behind the scenes and had the spiritually attached crow do the reconnaissance. There was nothing to criticize in terms of safety, but when it came to doing things, there was always a bit of mystifying. Luo Nan needed the cooperation of a partner. Originally, Luo Nan believed that this straightforward driver before him would be his future partner. But from the tone of his voice, it seemed that it was someone else. Knocking sounds rang out from the car window as he was pondering. Old Jean unlocked the door and someone opened the door to sit in the back. The person wore a brimmed hat, and the shadow covered half of his face. He was quite mysterious and he leaned back just as he sat down. His body movements were quite relaxed. Old Jean, my partner. Oh, a 70-centimeter bald crow. He's a giant. The person in the back swept his gaze over Ink, who was sitting in the front passenger seat. He immediately let out a gasp of admiration. Normal bald crows were around 50 centimeters in length when they reached adulthood. Ink's physique far exceeded that. Just a search on the internet would reveal this. But this person was able to distinguish the species of crows with a single glance and was well versed in the relevant knowledge. He should be an enthusiast or a professional. The person took off the brimmed hat as they spoke. Her black hair hung down like a waterfall, setting off a bright and beautiful face full of vitality. It seemed to brighten up the dusky car. Yes, this was a woman. She looked very young, around 20 years old. Her skin was a healthy wheat color. It wasn't dark, but it revealed a bright luster of life. To use a common saying, she was full of collagen, displaying an abundance of vitality. She casually tied her hair into a high ponytail. It could be seen that she was quite tall. When she straightened her back, her head nearly touched the roof of the car. And the hunting clothes on her body were tight, making her figure appear all the more curvaceous. Old Jean, I'm not late, right? Look at the speed of the car. Old Jean gave a simple reply. Then he poured the entire roast beef from the bag into his mouth. His cheeks bulged as he chewed with force. He knocked on the control panel and the car started up in smart mode, driving out of the underground parking lot. Luo Nan was speechless at such a bold way of eating. The beautiful woman in the back seat extended her hand over at this time. Luo Nan instinctively felt that she wanted to shake his hand and greet him. He wanted to order ink to extend its wings in response, but the crow's head had already been struck. Then it was rubbed left and right. This crow isn't bad. Oh, or should I say spirit bird, lich or shikigami? Which one sounds better? Peony has brought along a communication device. You two can directly talk. Old Jean spoke vaguely, giving Luo Nan an introduction. Peony? Luo Nan touched the rubber band and gave it a try. Hi, Mr. Crow. Hello. Hello. In any case, Miss Peony, it would be even better if you could stop pressing on Ink's head. This giant is called Ink? That's easy to remember. It'll be easier to greet him in the future. Also, there's no need to add Miss. Peony is my nickname. Just call me directly. Then you can just call me Crow. According to Zhang Yingying's explanation, everyone participating in this operation didn't know his true identity, including his partner. Of course, this was another layer of insurance, so Luo Nan accepted it. Peony laughed. Her eyes were very beautiful, and the corners of her eyes were very long. There was a clear reclining silkworm under her eyes, and the color was bright and moist. When she laughed, her eyes would curve into exquisite crescent moons. It was very alluring. Okay, I'll leave Mr. to Ink. Mr. Ink sounds pretty good. Scratch. Ink's fuzzy self-awareness awakened when he heard someone say his name in succession. He opened his mouth to speak, but his voice was unavoidably hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. This means that you've agreed, right? At this time, the civilian SUV they were riding in had already cut into the high-speed magnetic rail. According to the driving route, they needed to take a detour from Cloud City Water Village to rise into the sky. Crow shot a glance at the skyscrapers that towered into the clouds in the distance as he changed lanes. He especially looked at Ocean Sky Cloud City, which was at the very front. He couldn't see the details of the building from his position, but waves of tourists had come over since a week ago. They especially loved the viewing platform on the 142nd floor of Ocean Sky Cloud City. They stayed for half a day or even a day at a time. Not only did they use the viewing binoculars on the platform, they also brought all sorts of equipment with them. They watched with great delight. This group of tourists formed an interesting contrast with some of the construction workers of gear. There were also many types of data and information exchanged between them. It could be said that they thoroughly researched gear from the inside out. What was even more interesting was that the origins of these people were quite complicated from the current intelligence. There were at least 4 or 5 groups of financial backers. There were conflicts between them, but there were also collaborations. They each showed off their schemes and played to their heart's content. But no matter how they fought openly and covertly, these people all had a clear goal. They were all observing and speculating. Was there a deeper secret in this building called gear? Could they do something about it? Therefore, Luo Nan understood that gear seemed quiet right now, but it had already sunk into a turbulent undercurrent. Moreover, it was sinking deeper and deeper. As for why it was like this, the reason was still unclear. The pressure. Nothing was said along the way. 15 minutes later, the car drove into another underground parking lot. This place belonged to a certain business hotel in the city district. This area was connected to the recycling stratum. When the car went down, a dispirited and deranged figure wandered about on the other side of the thick wall. His line of sight was unable to penetrate the car and the thick wall, but the area with a radius of 30 meters was within the range of Ink's perception. It transformed into a detailed scene that was reflected in Luo Nan's mind several dozen kilometers away. Under pure observation mode, whether it was Luo Nan himself or his believers, their mental strength could penetrate through walls. There was nothing it couldn't reach. The only thing that could be limited was the limited range that they could cover. A radius of 30 meters. This was the current limit of Ink's natural perception. However, Luo Nan could also use telekinesis and other methods to temporarily expand it by a large margin. Luo Nan compared the relevant information and felt that this kind of ability was already enough. The car stopped precisely at the center of the parking lot. The elevator was right in front of it. Old Jean smacked his lips. He had already swallowed his beef clean. Get off the car. There's nothing else for me to do. Chapter 337. Under old Jin's urging, Peony got out of the car first and put on her wide-brimmed hat once more. She raised her hand and fiddled with the back of her head a couple of times. Her high, knotted ponytail pierced through the top of her hat's buckle and swayed slightly. It was lustrous, bright, and beautiful, yet also appeared lively and dynamic. Right now, Luo Nan could confirm that Peony's figure was quite tall. She had the absolute figure of a model. At first glance, she could compete with his older cousin Emoya. In other words, they were more than 180 centimeters tall. This put a lot of pressure on the youth who was only about 170 centimeters tall. Fortunately, he didn't have to reveal it now. Ink jumped out from the side window, unfurled its wings and with a slight turn, flew forward. Luo Nan saw that the elevator had stopped on the ground floor. He pressed a button with his interference force in passing, and the elevator lights lit up. The doors opened just as Peony arrived. "Thank you, Mr. Ink." Peony smiled unhurriedly, but she thanked the wrong target. However, when she smiled, the silkworm under her eye sockets became even clearer, outlining the shape of a crescent moon. The bottom of her eyes seemed to be shrouded by a light mist, misty and indistinct, making her look even more charming. Amidst her smile, Peony walked into the elevator and extended her hand to lightly brush her shoulder. "Aren't you going to take a break?" Luo Nan didn't express his opinion. Ink made its own decision. Perhaps it felt that the elevator was too narrow and that it couldn't spread its wings, so it simply landed on Peony's left shoulder. Wow, it's heavy. Be it from the perspective of species or the real world, Ink was indeed a big guy. At this moment, its two claws were hooked onto the shoulder of Peony's hunting clothes, and its wings were tucked in tightly. Otherwise, it would have forced Peony to tilt her head. The elevator went up and soon reached the 50th floor. There was a receptionist at the exit. When she saw Peony, especially the enormous crow on her shoulder, she stared blankly for a moment before coming forward to greet her. "Hello, are you Lady Peony of the Hidden Indigo firm?" Peony grunted. Her attitude was still quite adequate. When the receptionist's line of sight swept across Peony's pretty face, she was somewhat sluggish, but then her heart inexplicably chilled. He quickly attributed the reason to the crows. Let's not talk about whether the crow that occupied the shoulder of the beauty was majestic or not. Its posture was habitually leaning forward. Its height seemed fine, but its tail feathers and head formed a slanted line. It looked like someone was leaning forward and staring at you. The more one looked at it, the stranger its pitch-black eyes were. The receptionist couldn't help but take a step back. Realizing that she had lost her composure, she smiled awkwardly and took the opportunity to lean sideways. She gestured with her hand, "This way, please." Peony nodded and walked into the small conference room ahead. The room was about 40 square meters. The tables and chairs were arranged in an oval shape. The center was empty and there was some equipment inside. At this time the equipment was not turned on, but most of the chairs were already occupied. There were about 20 people. The appointed time was 9:30, and it was already 10:32. They were 2 minutes late, but the meeting hadn't started yet. It seemed like they weren't the only ones who were late. Seeing Peony come in with an enormous crow, everyone in the room turned their heads to size her up. Peony maintained her polite and distant smile. She withstood the gazes of everyone and directly found a place to sit down. She also brought out a curious gaze and swept it over the faces of everyone in the room. Her body language was very relaxed. Ink jumped down from her shoulder and stood on the table in front of her. Under Luo Nan's repeated warnings, Ink folded its wings and shut its mouth. It didn't utter a single sound, but its head twisted back and forth and its eyeballs followed suit. The beauty and the crow shifted their gazes and switched their targets at the same time. One person and one bird were brazenly watching the other participants. In the end, it was these people who held the advantage in numbers who couldn't take it anymore. They diverted their gazes one after another. Some of the people in the room had wanted to get closer to the beauty and greet her, but when they saw the situation, they dispelled these thoughts one after another. The atmosphere was bewildered and awkward. And so, of the 20 or so people in the conference room, only Peony's expression didn't change from beginning to end. Luo Nan couldn't help but admire her. He had Ink as a cover and he was several dozen kilometers away. He had no misgivings. And Peony's performance was clearly experienced. She was calm and composed, unyielding and imposing. I wonder what kind of work she does in the Hidden Indigo firm? Luo Nan discovered that he had been so busy these past few days that he was dizzy. He knew very little about his future partner. Right when he was pondering whether or not he should find Zhang Yingying and ask her for some information, the door rang out again. Another person entered the room. After a brief pause, the person walked straight over. The person simply pulled out a chair next to Peony. Only then did he bow and smile. "Can I sit here?" "Feel free." Peony turned her face to the side and roughly sized up the person. She didn't refuse. The person sat next to Peony. He was a young man wearing casual clothes. His semi-long curly hair was quite eye-catching. The ends of his hair hung down to his shoulders and it was a bit fluffy. His complexion was extremely fair, and he wore an earring in the middle of his left ear. Luonan was certain that this bro stylist was absolutely amazing. Not only did he not look like a sissy, he even used his hairstyle to further embellish the lines of his slightly mixed blood cheeks. This matched his healthy physique with wide shoulders and narrow waist. He had quite a manly air, and he had the style of an aristocrat from the old European royal families. After the person sat down, he first introduced himself. "Hello. My surname is Long. I'm ranked 7th. My friends call me Long 7. I just joined this group. I'll take the liberty to ask for your name. You can just call me Peony." "Peony?" Long 7's gaze swept across Peony's cheeks. In the end, it landed on her wide-brimmed hat. "I'm guessing that you're a student of Acumen College." Luonan was caught off guard. Only then did he discover that he had been overthinking things. From beginning to end, he had just been conversing with Peony. Peony didn't have any ill feelings toward this handsome mixed-blood kid. A smile blossomed from the corner of her eyes. She asked very cooperatively, "What's the reason?" "Please forgive me for speaking bluntly. As an amateur team formed from students, Jungle Owl has just entered the main WCG tournament. They've only participated in the 10 days in the wilderness event. Their results are even more lackluster. The majority of their peripheral products will only be digested within Acumen College." Only now did Luonan notice that the wide-brimmed hat Peony was wearing had a logo in the shape of a nightingale on the front. Presumably, this was the logo of the so-called Jungle Owl. "Can't be that bad. Jungle Owl's Pippi is very good-looking. He has a lot of fangirls both inside and outside the school." Peony's body leaned a bit more to the side. She propped an elbow on the table, and her fingertips pushed against the brim of the wide-brimmed hat. This careless action made the hat tilt a bit, but it gave her an even more carefree and casual air. Long 7 didn't say anything, but the eyeballs of the other participants who were sneaking glances at them nearly popped out. Next, Peony and Long 7 really did chat about topics related to esports. It was just that Long 7 was very familiar with the styles, members and battle records of each team. Peony was more interested in the good-looking people of each team, regardless of gender. I really do care about good-looking people. Other people watch the live broadcast of fights, but I watch the highlights, interviews and so on." Peony didn't hide her hobby at all. She giggled in extreme delight. Long 7 was just about to speak when he suddenly froze. Peony propped up her chin with one hand and extended the other under his startled gaze. Her slender fingers lightly brushed past the locks of hair at the side of Long 7's temples. It seemed to even touch his skin. "Of course you're not bad either." The ambiguity level was off the charts. The thrill level was off the charts. The vast majority of people in the conference room were eavesdropping and peeking at the conversation between the handsome man and the beautiful woman. Some people were caught off guard by Peony's actions. They drew in a cold breath. There were also some people whose eyes lit up with raging flames. The reason for this was that grass had grown in their hearts. Long 7 instantly recovered from his astonishment. He instinctively reached out to grab Peony's probing fingers, but he was still half a step too late. Peony's slender hand noiselessly pulled back, but her thumb and forefinger were pinching a dazzling silver earring. It was the one on Long 7's ear. Seeing the object on Peony's fingertips, Long 7's complexion became grave for the first time since they met. "Miss Peony, just call me Peony." Amidst this seemingly familiar conversation, Peony's posture didn't change. She merely pinched the earring and brought it closer to her eyes, sizing it up in detail. Later on, her fingers clearly exerted more force, but the earring that resembled a fine loop didn't react. Long 7's complexion was heavy. Just as he was about to say something, the beauty in front of him extended her slender hand again and delivered it to his eyes. "It's a pretty good earring. Is it platinum?" Long 7 didn't answer Peony's question. In the first instant he took back the earring and put it back on his ear. His taut face relaxed a little, but he could no longer return to his previous cheerful state. The atmosphere became increasingly strange. Ink sensed the change in the atmosphere. It subconsciously flapped its wings and even dropped a feather. Peony casually picked it up and giggled as she poked Ink's head. She minded her own business and played happily. It seemed that she didn't take Long Seven's change in attitude to heart in the slightest. What a self-centered woman. Just as Luo Nan made his initial judgment, another person walked into the conference room. He stood directly at the front of the oval conference table and swept his gaze across the conference room. He nodded and said, "Everyone's here. Let's start the meeting." The last person to enter had an elderly appearance. He was at least 70 years old, but his posture was ramrod straight. His self-introduction was full of energy, and his voice was sonorous. "I am Wu Bin, the Executive Director of Trigate Corporation. I am also the person in charge of this project and the organizer of the team. I will be the one to coordinate the specific operations of the project for some time to come. There are 2 trustworthy professionals present here, and there are also the elites of the company. They all possess formidable strength. I believe that this maintenance operation will certainly achieve satisfactory results." Wu Bin's words were a bit bureaucratic, but this was in line with Trigate Corporation's judgment of having a military background. Wu Bin's words were inflexible, but this didn't mean that his brain was rigid. Wu Bin knew very well that this was the first time the experts he had invited were meeting with the members of the team. They needed to have an intuitive understanding. He took advantage of this opportunity to point at the subordinate beside him. "We'll start with you. Make a self-introduction." The subordinate suddenly stood up. He was just about to speak when Peony raised her hand from the middle of the conference table. Her fingertips were still holding the inky and translucent blue crow feather. "Director Wu, the Hidden Indigo firm hopes that you can explain the personnel composition of the operation team first. According to the contract signed between the firm and your esteemed company, we should be the sole professional instructors and commanders." 2 professionals. What do you mean by that? Her words silenced the pitiful subordinate. He could only look stupidly at Wu Bin. Chapter 338. Wu Bin furrowed his brows slightly when faced with Peony's inquiry. Then he revealed a smile and said, "It's like this. According to the latest intelligence, some of our targets have the ability to spit out large doses of radiation for a short period of time. They like to live in radiation zones, so I specifically invited Mr. Long Seven." Wu Bin extended his hand as he spoke. Long Seven was very cooperative. He stood up to greet the people present. His bearing and demeanor were first-rate. His natural and relaxed body language diluted the awkward atmosphere in the conference room. There should be applause here. The participants really did start clapping. Wu Bin invited Long Seven to sit down and continued, "Mr. Long Seven is a professional talent recommended by Northern Hope Corporation. He possesses the special ability to use radiation harmlessly. Northern Hope Corporation's vision is worthy of trust as the world's top provider of human resources solutions. I also believe in Mr. Long Seven's professionalism. At the same time, please believe in our sincerity and cooperation and our ability to fulfill the contract." Luo Nan already had a rough judgment when he heard this. This team should have frequent dealings with ability users. Talking about special abilities was as natural as drinking water to them. They didn't pay much attention to Ink, a strange pet. Presumably they were rich in experience and didn't find it strange. This saved them a lot of worry. Peony interlaced her 10 fingers. The back of her hand arched slightly to support her chin. She appeared to be even more focused. However, the crow feather that lightly scratched the side of her face revealed a bit of interest. Of course, no matter what position a beauty was in, she looked good. She also had the wonderful effect of dispelling the negative emotions of others. She smiled just like this. "The firm has no doubts about your company's strength and reputation. But out of professional considerations, all matters must be led by the firm during the investigation and target locking process. This point cannot be changed because of the team's composition, the target species, the environment, and other factors." Wu Bin immediately responded, "We won't go back on the matters emphasized in the agreement." Peony's gaze switched to Long Seven's face. "The firm will not be responsible for any losses caused by the partners or team members who violate the terms of the agreement during the operation. We will withdraw from this project according to the agreement and demand compensation." Wu Bin confirmed, "No objections." Long Seven gazed at Peony from the side. 2 seconds passed before he laughed. "I provide specialized services. Miss Peony oversees the overall situation. The two don't contradict each other. I will certainly abide by the relevant provisions." Peony laughed as she sat up straight. She tossed the crow feather on the table. "Then I have nothing else to say." Wu Bin secretly heaved a sigh of relief. A bold smile appeared on his face. Since we're a team, it's best to communicate in time. Being able to point it out like Miss Peony can eliminate many problems. Although he said this, he wasn't willing to let Peony open her mouth again. He indicated that the personal introduction should quickly begin. Immediately, the team members introduced themselves one by one, as well as their positions in the team. Very soon, it was Peony and Long Seven's turn. Draconic Seven's appearance was rather noble, but he had a sense of community. He took the initiative to introduce himself. Director Wu mentioned just now that he's mainly interested in my radiation decontamination ability. I won't talk about that. In addition, I've also done some research on firearms and exoskeleton operations. Peony suddenly interrupted him. What kind of exoskeleton? Military? Police? Or a deep blue walker? Long Chi smiled and replied, anything is fine. Oh, sorry for my rudeness. Though she said this, Peony wasn't surprised in the slightest. She casually raised her hand, indicating that it was her turn. As you can see, my special ability is to control birds to carry out wide-area reconnaissance. In addition, I can do some intelligence integration and analysis work. It seems like the team already has an intelligence officer? Wu Bin immediately declared, we will definitely cooperate well. Axel Thor is mainly in charge of communication and information sharing. He's a very good assistant. Intelligence Officer Axel Thor, who had just introduced himself, stood up once more and greeted Peony. Afterwards, he didn't sit down again. Instead, he followed Wu Bin's intentions and began to introduce the specific information of the operation project. This wasn't just a report to Peony and Draconic 7. The vast majority of the people in the conference room were elites of Trigate Security's operations department. However, they didn't have the authority to inspect certain key information. It was necessary to carry out a comprehensive explanation. The light in the room dimmed and the projector turned on, projecting a different world inside. The light in the background was that of dusk. The setting sun shone at an angle, and the dark red soil of the desolate plains was folded layer upon layer. It absorbed the multicolored light, like a surging wave of blood that froze in an instant. It piled up into an uncountable number of hills and ravines, extending all the way to the ends of the world. The wilderness, wave peaks and hills? Draconic 7 muttered. He seemed to be talking to himself, but he also seemed to be deliberately communicating with Peony. Peony turned her head to look at him. You're very familiar with the surrounding terrain of Xia City. I run around once in a while. In the time it took to say 2 or 3 sentences, the aerial image continued to push forward. At the end of the monotonous horizon, the altitude gradually dropped, revealing a blood-colored hilly region. This caused Draconic 7's words to be filled with foresight. The camera gradually locked onto the target. In the skies above the hilly region, countless black dots circled in the dusky sky. They were like a weary flock of birds returning to their nests. But when the camera zoomed in and locked onto an individual, Luonan's eyelids twitched even though he was far away in Acumen College's campus. The thing that appeared in the center of the projection wasn't a bird at all. It was more like an ugly and deformed bat. This was a mutant without a doubt. The body of this bat wasn't large. Its wingspan was around 30 centimeters. Its head was like that of a small canine. Its ears were very large, its teeth were sharp and its eyes were blood red. Its entire body was covered in grayish-black fur. The most recognizable part was the 4 claws that stretched out from the edge of the membrane-like wings. From a different angle, one could see that this monster had all 4 limbs, and its muscles were knotted together. It looked extremely powerful and its membrane wings were more like appendages. Intelligence Officer Axel Thew's explanation intervened in time. The winghand blood bat is a gregarious mutant. It normally feeds on the blood of large mammals. When it sucks blood, it injects paralysis toxins and various viruses. If the dose is high enough, it can be fatal. Its diet includes humans as well as its own kind. A large population can be classified as a Class 2 threat. In the wilderness, vagrants generally call it pubula. It's an onomatopoeia, an imitation of the sound it makes when it flaps its wings. He turned on the sound effects as he spoke. The sound of the scene was reproduced with extremely high fidelity. Hundreds and thousands of strange bats circled and danced in the air, emitting a strange sound. It was like a large number of flags fluttering in the wind. It was a continuous stretch. Axel Thew cut out an anatomical diagram at the edge of the projection. Everyone please take note. The winghand blood bat doesn't have a vocal organ. In its normal state it doesn't make a sound when it flies or eats. It's a terrifying assassin of the night. It only makes a similar sound when it's courting a mate. Of course, they are extremely irritable and sensitive during these times. Their destructive power is at its strongest. As he spoke, a diagram popped up below the anatomical diagram. It seemed like this person's PPT skill was maxed out. The Winghand bloodbat is in heat. When it sucks blood, it injects a virus that is highly contagious and lethal. There have been many records of small to medium-sized vagrant tribes being wiped out by the virus. For example, this place is the ruins of a vagrant tribe that perished. The camera's perspective shifted. One could see that there were some empty holes on top of the hill. They were quite regular, serving as doors and windows. These were the crypts commonly used by vagrant tribes. They were relatively sturdy and had strong concealment. They could avoid the majority of predators in the wilderness. The game 10 Days in the Wilderness had scenes of crypt battles. Even Luonan was no stranger to it. It was just that what appeared on the screen was deathly stillness. As the camera switched, a few dried-up corpses appeared amidst the rubble and weeds. Practically every single person's body was curled up. It was easy to imagine that they had experienced a bitter struggle. The conference room was silent. Intelligence Officer Axel Thew continued to explain, "We need to pay special attention to this. According to the latest research, certain mutant winghand bloodbats have evolved to have limited control over the virus. I don't know if everyone understands what I'm saying." Long 7 interrupted and asked, "Are you saying that the winghand bloodbat can control whether or not the target is infected?" "No. It's the degree of infection. It might even include the probability of mutation. According to the experimental data of a certain research organization, a single winghand bloodbat has successfully caused 2 experimental bodies to undergo mutation." Human experiments? Intelligence Officer Axel Thew swept a glance at his boss and shrugged. "The data doesn't show this." He didn't continue on this topic. He just patiently introduced all sorts of habits of the winghand bloodbat, including the latest results of various research organizations. He didn't even leave out the mutant subspecies. Inevitably, he also explained the routes and areas where this mutant could infiltrate Xia City one by one. Looking back, they spent a total of over 2 hours. Acumen College's morning classes had ended by this time. Trigate Corporation probably felt that it was too long and tedious. All sorts of drinks and fruits were placed on the table. Even Ink was given a cup of water. They waited until the end with great difficulty, but a rather impressive display board appeared on the side of the projection. There were many dark silhouettes and silhouettes on it. They were roughly divided into 4 layers. The top layer was a bit sparse, but the bottom layer was densely packed. There were at least 20 of them. The images of the wilderness and the flock of winghand bloodbats transformed into a mass of light and entered the first silhouette in the upper left corner. This was the tempo of the conference going on for 2 days. Long 7 couldn't help but shake his head. "It's quite a large scale. Isn't it better to sound the red alert now?" Peony's eyes and lips were smiling, but the meaning behind her words wasn't the same. She didn't expect a direct response from Wu Bin. She directly spoke to her pet. "Mr. Ink, have you woken up?" Ink, who had been a wooden statue for a long time, raised its eyelids. It really did sleep under Luonan's orders. It only left a strand of mental clairvoyance to observe its surroundings for Luonan to use. Otherwise, with its lively and restless nature, it would have caused a ruckus long ago. "We've already prepared lunch. I asked the 2 experts to honor us." Wu Bin had no choice but to open his mouth to explain as he invited, "The winghand bloodbats are exceptions." Peony cast a sidelong glance. 3 exceptions. And they're still called exceptions? There were 4 layers of silhouettes on the display board. The topmost layer had a total of 3, including the winghand bloodbats. The second layer had 5. The third and fourth layers each had 8. There were a total of 24. There was no need to talk about exceptions. Just the fact that 24 mutants had slaughtered their way into Xia City was one of the most serious public safety incidents in the last 30 years. Wu Bin continued to beat around the bush. "The threat of these targets decreases in descending order from the top to the bottom. For this reason, we designed milestones and stage bonuses. The topmost 3 have special prizes." Peony looked straight at Wu Bin's face. "It's great to talk about money, but the government and military rarely engage in this sort of targeted search, right? This way we can increase efficiency." "Yeah, it saves quite a bit of effort. Mr. Long 7, what do you think?" Long 7 crossed his arms over his chest and made an action that wasn't very noble. "The level of modern technology is really changing with each passing day." Peony pressed down on the goblet on the table and gave it a slight spin. The blue foam of the drink hung on the wall and spun. She then raised her glass and indicated to Long 7, "Cheers to the future of the Earth." Chapter 339. It was the turn of autumn and winter. The night increased and the sun shrunk. Half of the afternoon club time had yet to pass, but the sunlight that poured into Acumen College was dyed with a layer of blood. It faintly overlapped with the wilderness in the projection. Luo Nan rode the campus trolley to the auditorium. His eyes were half closed, looking like he was sleeping yet not. Shuelei didn't care. He had to split his attention. He had been like this all day. But his wristband vibrated for a dozen or so seconds. He could hear the buzzing vibrations from the side, but this bro still didn't respond. What was the meaning of this? In the end, Shuelei couldn't help but give Luo Nan a push. "Someone's calling you." Luo Nan went, "Ah," and finally came back to his senses. He looked at the contact and picked up the phone. "Hello, third brother?" The caller was Hu Huaying. The call connected with great difficulty. He asked right away, "Nanster, where are you?" "I'm heading to Gear." "Okay. Hurry up and get over here. The construction team is wrapping up their work today. The underground facilities can be considered to have been repaired. They called Old Xia and Old Xia called me. He asked you to come and check it out." "Check it out?" Luo Nan felt that it was quite comical. Ever since Gear was damaged by fire last week, it had become a gathering place for all sorts of immortals. There were always 5 or 6 or 7 spies. Check it out for what? Check the amount of intelligence collected by each clan? Of course, this matter had nothing to do with Xie Junping and Hu Huaying. In the end, Luo Nan was too high profile back then. He also displayed extraordinary importance to Gear. Even if there was nothing special about Gear, it would still attract a few glances. Plus, this place wasn't that simple. Luo Nan's mood swayed for a moment before he responded in a low voice. "I understand. I'll be there in a moment." Luo Nan hung up and leaned back. He unconsciously furrowed his brows. Shuelei turned his head to look. "You're not having a meeting anymore?" Luo Nan grunted. "I'm not having a meeting? It's too long. I don't really understand." Actually, his words were a bit insincere. Shuelei didn't hear it. He was just curious. What did they talk about? "It's about mutations, genetic pollution, transmission probabilities, and things like that." Luo Nan used telepathy to inform Peony as he spoke to Shuelei. He only retained a bit of telepathy to give Inca rain. His attention was completely withdrawn. It was already 4:30 in the afternoon. The meeting had already been going for 7 hours. Luo Nan withdrew and he subconsciously let out a breath of relief. As time went on, the meeting became more and more involved in various professional discussions. The relevant professional knowledge was too obscure and profound for a high school student. Sometimes it was like listening to a book from heaven. Forcefully trying to understand it was extremely taxing on the brain, and there were also inaccurate problems. If that was the case, then it would be better to directly listen to the results. The hidden indigo trading firm had arranged it this way. Luo Nan finally understood Zhang Yingying's good intentions. If he followed the pattern of today's meeting, then he wouldn't need to do anything for the next few days. But Luo Nan had to admit that this long meeting really broadened his horizons. The professional knowledge regarding the mutants and the wilderness, as well as the relevant intelligence analysis, were mostly unheard of and unseen. It was all thanks to the remedial classes that he had taken during this period of time. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't even be able to grasp the relevant basic knowledge. Recently, you have to be careful of cats, dogs, birds, bats, and mice. Don't get hurt by them. By the way, there's a recycling stratum in the Twin River district. Pay attention to the people. What's wrong? Virus infection? A plague outbreak? It's not that serious. It doesn't affect normal people too much. It's mainly us. Luo Nan recalled the knowledge he obtained from the meeting and gave Shuelei a warning. Mutants spread the virus. The stronger and stronger the infected person, the greater the probability of a mutation occurring. Ability users were the most dangerous group. Just like the storm caused by the splitting and spreading of the human-faced arachnid some time ago. Aside from a few unlucky bastards who were close by, normal people practically escaped unscathed. But many ability users of the Xia City branch were controlled by the parasite, causing a huge mess. It was an infection on the mental plane. And for mutants like the wing-hand bat, their toxins and viruses were transmitted through the blood. Enhanced fleshly body users were more likely to attract flies. Shuelei's teeth ached from hearing this. He grimaced in pain and couldn't help but ask for a few details. Luo Nan acted as the translator. He told Luo Nan the information he knew and selected the ones that were directly related to himself. He only requested that Shui Lei not spread it further and that he remind his family to be careful. It was fine for them to immediately contact the society if any symptoms occurred. Biohazard crisis, huh? Did the city hide it like this? If you didn't say it, there wouldn't have been any news at all? Alright, is there a problem with you saying these things? I did sign a confidentiality agreement. Luo Nan laughed and waved his hand. The agreement clearly states that the hidden indigo firm and its shareholders have the right to know and follow up on relevant developments. They also have the right to notify relevant stakeholders at their discretion. But it shouldn't cause any social impact. Isn't that fine? Social impact. Shui Lei didn't quite understand. Don't go on the various authoritative media outlets. Rumors don't reach a certain scale. This should be fine. Shui Lei let out a sigh of relief, but he couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself. This agreement isn't worth a fart. It can be considered an unequal agreement. This clause was indeed extremely vague. If one were to force the words out, then the scope of knowledge could be expanded limitlessly. The Xia City branch was a shareholder of the hidden indigo firm. It was also a relevant public welfare party. And Shui Lei was also a member of the society. There was no problem in terms of legal principles. It was unknown how many times Peony had used this sort of method in the meeting to torment Wu Bin to the point where he wanted to cry but had no tears. This was another harvest of Luo Nan's today. Aside from professional knowledge, it also included methods and techniques for handling matters. Peony, Long 7, Director Wu Bin, Intelligence Officer Axel though, and the others had done a very good demonstration of this. Luo Nan spoke to Shui Lei expressing his emotions. Swords and blades killing silently. Just what are these people's brains made of? He truly admired Luo Nan. Luo Nan had experienced many things ever since he entered the inner world. He was always in the eye of the storm, and he was always the target of concentrated fire. There were many times when he needed to be at the forefront, contending against his opponents and negotiating with his teammates. There was no room for buffering. Reality proved that he wasn't a natural leader. To a certain degree he was even lame. Ever since he was 10 years old, he spent the vast majority of his time in experiments, burying his head in research. His personality was introverted to the point of being autistic. He had no concept of certain things at all. He could only follow his feelings. There were many flaws in his actions and there were many times when he was courting death. Fortunately, his luck was decent. He had the support of the power bestowed upon him by formatting theory. He also had the help of He Yuan, Zhang Yingying, and even big shots like Ouyang Qin. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died a violent death on the streets. Instead, he had stumbled his way through life until now. As for today's meeting, Luo Nan stayed behind the scenes, a rare sight. Only a strand of his mind was tied to ink. He kept his mouth shut, only bringing his eyes and ears. His experience along the way was truly pure observation, and he truly benefited from it. This was especially true for Peony and Long 7. Peony had a strong ego, but she was very good at using her beauty to conceal herself. Long 7, on the other hand, was a needle hidden in silk. His sharp and arrogant aura was hidden under his confident and noble words and actions. The two would sometimes oppose each other with equal harshness. Sometimes they would cooperate closely. Even a seasoned character like Wu Bin was brought into the rhythm of the entire meeting. The title of team leader had long since ceased to exist in name. The attraction of this sort of scene was much stronger than the dry classroom teaching. Peony and Long 7 were both in their 20s, but their reserves of knowledge, their behavior, their words, and even their personalities made Luo Nan feel that it was wonderful. He was very envious, and perhaps even a bit inferior. There was a difference of 6 or 7 years in age. Was the difference that big? Would he be able to reach this level if he trained for another 6 or 7 years? All right, it seemed like there was a glimmer of hope. Another call came in just as Luo Nan was describing the situation in the meeting to Shui Lei. This time the call came from a different channel. It was a vibration from the Hexier. It was Zhang Yingying. After the call connected, this sister excitedly cut to the chase and asked, "Did you shock them?" "Shock." Luo Nan sighed from the bottom of his heart. "Your firm is full of elites. That Peony is really amazing. She seems to be from our school?" "Hey, you jumped into the sea to catch lobsters. Now you're being modest? Don't just praise others. What about you?" "Me? What else can I do? I was just pretending to be a crow there." "Crow my ass. I think you're the one who's lost your mind. Bro, you're the core of this project, okay? It doesn't matter if they're elites or not. If you don't say anything, are they playing hide and seek in Xia City? Zhang Yingying's mood drifted erratically. She had been laughing and joking earlier, but now she was resentful that Luonan didn't live up to her expectations. The firm outsourced this project to you because of your mental sensing ability. All the work revolved around you. If our firm wants to finish the work, we might as well throw the money into the sea. At least we can hear the sound of it. Luonan didn't know how to respond. This was different from their previous bickering. Zhang Yingying was completely standing on his side. She had said everything that needed to be said. It would be a bit rude for him to refute her. He was silent for quite a while, but Zhang Yingying let out a sigh. She slowed down first. I'm not blaming you. I just feel that this opportunity is very good. It's more or less tailor-made for you. You handled things like a game. This? You can't treat the invasion of mutants as child's play. Describe. I'm just describing, okay? Haven't you noticed? Your biggest problem is that your heartstrings are too taut. Isn't it just searching for mutants? With your mental sensing ability, you're pretty much the only one in Xia City. Aside from the boss and the president, no one can do it better than you. This is your profession, your domain. You're the authority there. If you don't put on airs now, when will you? Oh my God. Luonan's silence spoke volumes. Zhang Yingying couldn't help but look up at the sky and let out a long sigh. You were at Frost River Reality and Ocean Sky Cloud City. Your performance was pretty awesome. You blocked people until they went crazy. You tricked people until they vomited blood. You killed people until they were completely annihilated. You were freaking godlike back then. It's only been a few days. How come you're shrinking more and more? I'm not shrinking. Luonan wanted to clear his name. Yes. You're an old man, but you can't keep it up all day long. Is your brain short of blood? Zhang Yingying's mouth was like a machine gun. She suddenly fired shots. Relax. Relax your mind. What are you nervous about? Are you afraid of losing face? Don't talk about your authority. Even if you're a bit flawed, you don't even show your face. So what if you're wrong? That crow is called ink, right? It's just a mask. With it blocking the front, no one knows who you are. You can laugh, you can curse, you can cry, and you can make a fuss. As long as you don't tell them, who will know? Chapter 340. Zhang Yingying stuttered a bit when Luonan really asked. She had spoken with a wave of emotion in an attempt to arouse Luonan's emotions. She didn't pay attention to what came before and after. She never expected that Luonan would be numb to the extreme. He even had the leisure to ask a question. Zhang Yingying had no choice but to make up a story on the spot. Look, people wear masks. They have an extra layer of protection. With protection, it's easier to let go. Isn't there a school of performance that lets people wear masks on stage? That way, the expression of the body is more important. You don't need to worry about your face or your appearance. The audience will naturally imagine things. Isn't it said that imagination is more perfect than reality? Zhang Yingying's logic was already a complete mess when she spoke to this point. Even she had to cover her face. But she never expected that Luonan would really be led into the ditch by her. So you're saying that this is a performance and I'm going to manage a new image? This will reduce the pressure? The power of his imagination had exploded. Zhang Yingying's collapsed logic was inadvertently salvaged by Luonan. She immediately seized the opportunity and fiercely nodded from the other side. Yeah. Do you see those trolls online? Many of them have high incomes and high education levels. Normally they appear virtuous in front of others. But when they go online, they create sock puppets everywhere. Their mouths are full of shit. This is their way of venting and relieving pressure. Think about it. This is human instinct. Your behavior online is certainly different from your own personality. Luonan seriously recalled his online life. Then he answered, there doesn't seem to be any difference. Zhang Yingying took a deep breath. Then she spat out word by word. She gnashed her teeth. Then learn. Learn how others vent. Learn how to let go. Otherwise, you'll collapse sooner or later if you keep being this nervous. You don't need to think about anything else. In the entire firm, only the boss and I know your identity. Even Peony doesn't know? Of course she doesn't know. She's a newcomer? A newcomer? What does she do in your firm? What else can she do? The boss just discovered her recently. He hasn't arranged any specific tasks yet. It just so happens that there's this project. Let her cooperate for a bit. Luonan felt as if his heart had been stabbed with a knife. Not only did he not relax, he became depressed. Newcomers are this amazing. What did she do before? Zhang Yingying was getting impatient. That's because the boss has a good eye. He seems to have been observing for a while and only recently recruited him. She's not from the society, nor is she from the church. She has nothing to do with the military. God knows where she came from. She's so mysterious. Alright, don't let her scare you. She's just an assistant and a messenger. The real decision maker is you. Luo Nan really wanted to say, you wouldn't think this way if you were participating. But he suddenly felt that something was wrong when the words reached his mouth. It was the same topic, but Zhang Yingying's emotions were much more intense than last Sunday. She was obviously not calm. As soon as this thought arose, the words that came out of his mouth also changed. You don't like this peony too much? Zhang Yingying fell silent. Luo Nan recalled Zhang Yingying's attitude and suddenly realized, you can't be fighting for favor. Jealous of a newcomer? Go to hell. Zhang Yingying was really angry and hung up the call. Luo Nan grunted, but his judgment became firmer. He could judge from Zhang Yingying's character and words that she should have a very special position in the hidden indigo firm. She was doted on by Her Majesty Empress Wu. And the newcomer peony had suddenly appeared. Her conduct was very brilliant, and her abilities were very strong. She probably gave Zhang Yingying a sense of crisis. These thoughts were very subtle. Perhaps Zhang Yingying herself didn't even realize it, but Luo Nan had rashly pointed it out. Honestly speaking, this was very rude. Hanging up the call was a light punishment. It was good enough that she didn't blacklist him. Luo Nan scratched his head. He began to have a headache about how to apologize to Zhang Yingying. But in the end he wasn't someone who could speak well. In the end he could only leave a message on the psychic wave network. I misspoke. I'm sorry. Also thank you. I understand. Luo Nan assessed himself. The first few words were very clumsy, but they were very sincere. But the last few words had a fake meaning. Understand? The reasoning was clear, but his thoughts were far from clear on how to do it. Most of the time, Luo Nan felt that doing these things didn't have much meaning. Relax. Would relaxing make those enemies who were eyeing him like tigers let go? Would it make his pursuits materialize? If he had the time to mull over this matter, it would be better to calm his heart and do a few more exercises. Suddenly, someone in the car let out a low cry. A muffled bang followed. Something smashed heavily against the car window. This brought about a new, even louder cry. Everyone in the car turned their heads to look. Most of the people in the car were habitually immersed in the internet. They didn't know what was going on outside the window. A guy wearing a baseball cap had already pulled open the window and was cursing into the distance. He even gave a middle finger. Stinky feet. If you lose another 0-3, I'll kick your balls. Luo Nan saw clearly that a tram was passing through an open-air stadium. A player who was training lost control of his feet and let a football smash against the car window. This was a small matter, but a portion of the students in the car found a common topic. Someone said to the guy wearing the baseball cap, the Pathfinder team's level this year is insane. They can even lose 0-3 to Yunshang. Lucky for them they even found Clark. Clark, that one-man race. He only knows how to run 100 meters along the sidelines. He wants to take the opportunity to practice track and field. How much transfer fee did the track and field club give him? Hey, he ran almost 20 kilometers for the entire game. If you can do it, why don't you go up? Go up and weed? After one lap, the turf will be fine, but his ankle will be broken. That's right. Lando Field is too trashy. It doesn't match the school's position at all. We should find a more responsible sponsor. Is there anyone who wants to sign with me? The atmosphere in the car grew more and more lively. Many people who had been silent the entire way broke their silence at this time. They all participated in the discussion of the game. Some students had already signed on the school's message board. Some took the opportunity to collect the contact numbers of female students. They gained quite a lot. Luo Nan didn't care about this at first. He raised his eyes and wanted to return to his own mental world. But at this time he saw Shuelei. He was also exchanging contact numbers with someone. They were discussing topics related to Clark's level. Luo Nan was inexplicably horrified. You know that guy? Of course I know. Clark? Kembo, the sports star of the school. He's a lightning bolt on the field. Rumor has it that he'll soon be selected for the City United team. I saw him compete at the beginning of school. His feet aren't as rough as others say. Shuelei responded as if it was a matter of course. Then he was horrified. You don't know? There are posters of him all over the school building right now. Luo Nan gaped. He looked at the chattering peers on the car and his heart inexplicably sank. Several seconds later, he opened his mouth and asked, You know what a jungle owl is too? Of course. Our school's team plays 10 days in the wilderness. They lost miserably in the fall competition last month. You met someone from the jungle owl? Oh. No. Luo Nan muttered a few words in response. He turned his head and his gaze passed through the window, unconsciously sweeping the campus. Shuelei was confused. What's wrong? Nothing. I just feel like I'm quite a homebody. Luo Nan laughed and didn't say anything more. Actually, he had lied once again. His evaluation of himself right now couldn't be described as a homebody. Shuelei concentrated on fighting. Peony was employed at the hidden indigo firm. The businesses they engaged in were a certain distance away from the world of normal people. But they didn't lose their perception of their surroundings. Luo Nan was far too boring in comparison. The trolley slowly arrived at the auditorium station. Students and passengers got on and off the trolley, and the topic of football had already vanished into thin air. It was as if nothing had happened. Luo Nan deliberately turned his head to look after getting off the trolley. Soon, his line of sight cut into the lively surroundings of the auditorium. He had been training his eyes orifice here a week ago. He was very familiar with every blade of grass and every tree. He had an idea of how many steps there were. The faces of the people who often moved around here were even a bit familiar to him. But that was all. After all, these were only his temporary observation targets. Deeper information was meaningless. Luo Nan had always understood things this way. But when he returned here today, he suddenly had a feeling. He was incompatible with this auditorium, with the surrounding plaza, and even with the entire campus. He was like this 2 months ago when he first entered the school. He was still like this now. This feeling wasn't too good. Luo Nan and Shuelei didn't waste any time. They directly entered the forest on the outskirts of the north bank. They made a few turns and they arrived in front of Gear. The smell of smoke and fire from back then still lingered in this place. The construction team had already finished today's work by this time. They withdrew one after another and the place became a bit more lively. Hu Huaying was already waiting in the lobby by the time Luo Nan arrived. Aside from him, the supervisor and the project manager were all here. It looked like they were treating today as an official inspection. Hu Huaying immediately introduced them to Luo Nan. Luo Nan nodded in greeting, but he didn't have any intentions of going deep into the conversation. He didn't immediately start the inspection either. Instead he asked about Xie Junping. In the past, the young master of the Xie family was always at the forefront. Luo Nan really did miss him a bit when he was suddenly not around. With him here they could chat a few dirty jokes. Wouldn't it be lively? Old Xie has been quite mysterious lately. It's probably because he's playing around with Sissy Du he's fasting and cultivating. Luo Nan accidentally heard the biggest joke in Xia City. He couldn't help but grin. Hu Huaying couldn't help but laugh as well. He wakes up at 6 in the morning and sleeps at 9 in the evening. He's persisted for 5 days. Oh, this isn't simple. But having a regular lifestyle is a good thing. It looks like he's persevering. The Sissy Du that Hu Huaying mentioned was the former president of the Mystic Arts Research Society, Du Yong. Luo Nan had only met him once so he wasn't too familiar with him. He just knew that Du Yong was a bit neurotic, but he was a decent person. They chatted idly for a bit before talking about gear. The project manager maintained his silence this entire time. The supervisor explained things to Luo Nan, but Luo Nan didn't really listen. It was nothing more than equipment installation and wiring, maintenance of various systems and so on. Luo Nan grunted and grunted in response. He wasn't a professional, so he was entrusted to the supervisor according to the contract. However, it wasn't just the construction team. The supervisor's spy operation was also flying. Chapter 341. Luo Nan recognized that Gear was currently attracting flies. In Acumen College, Gear possessed a bit of a mysterious color. Even Xie Junping, a layman, had heard of names like the Ritual Society. He said that it was very suitable for carrying out mystic rituals. Then there was Luo Nan. It was hard for the professionals and experts to not feel that something was fishy. Actually, the Xia City branch had already made an assessment before the spies from all walks of life flooded in. They also said that the structure of the building was out of the ordinary. As for where the specific beauty lay, they were unable to come to a conclusion for a while. Because of this, He Yuan suggested that Luo Nan follow the principle of opening up is better than blocking, and let the spies in first. This way they could not block everything and let the people from all walks of life speculate in their hearts. The matter of headquarters could serve as a warning. This was a smart method, but it was also a cowardly move. Luo Nan acted according to He Yuan and the others' instructions for a week. He turned a blind eye to the spy's actions on the surface, but in reality he was fretful in his heart. He could not stop the spies from all sides. He could only swallow his anger, but this did not mean that Luo Nan would treat the spies well. He already had a plan in mind. He let the supervising engineer do as he pleased and let him wander around the underground space. He did not express any opinions or emotions for over half an hour. The sky was already dark. The supervising engineer and the project manager were completely unable to grasp Luo Nan's pulse. They were unable to continue. Hu Huaying could roughly see Luo Nan's attitude at this time. She stood up and said a few words, sending the supervising engineer and the project manager away. After waiting for the outsiders to get lost, Hu Huaying asked, "Nanster, is this project not to your liking?" Luo Nan shook his head. "I don't understand professional matters, but there's nothing to be dissatisfied with. Let them continue to repair it. You know, this place is of great importance to me. It would be fine if nothing happened, but if something did happen, I need to take some precautions. When that happens, I won't be able to find outsiders." Old Xie said that this construction didn't restore the previous defense system. He wanted you to personally design it? You certainly don't lack professionals. Hu Huaying giggled, more or less flattering him. Last week at Ocean Sky Cloud City, he saw with his own eyes how the arrogance of the young master of the He family was suppressed. No, he wasn't suppressed. The flames were extinguished on their own. The group of people surrounding Luo Nan were all very mysterious. Perhaps they had great backgrounds. Especially He Donglo's older sister. According to their later understanding, she really was He Donglo's older sister. She had just retired from the special forces and returned home. Who would have thought that she and Luo Nan would play together? In the past, she was a bit puzzled by Xie Juanping's attitude of trying to befriend Luo Nan in every possible way. But now it was different. If he was given a chance, he would be 10 times more enthusiastic than Xie Junping. No matter what was said or done, the Xie family was still the #1 business group in Xia City. The Hu family was a level lower. If the Hu family worked hard to catch up, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the Hu family worked 10 times as hard as they could. At this point he had another thought. Old Xie didn't take good care of this person and instead went to play mysticism with Sissy Du. Was he relying on his relationship with him to stabilize, or was he trying to cater to his preferences in another direction? While he was thinking, they walked out of the fire escape and entered an open space. The light was dim. There were no lights to illuminate the place. A dark and gloomy sky hovered above their heads. Hu Huaying had been leaning here for several days now. She had a clear understanding of the architectural layout of gear and the maintenance process. She swept a glance and said, "The atrium here is a bit messy. It's hard to avoid some junk falling down during the repairs. We have to wait until the end to clean it up." Luo Nan grunted and raised his head to look up. Gear had 7 floors underground, 4 floors above ground, and a half-sealed rooftop. There were a total of 12 floors. Right now they were on the lowest floor, looking at the ceiling of the atrium that was several dozen meters high. The architectural layout of gear was different from the vulgar. Only an architect or an insider like Luo Nan could understand how extraordinary it was. And the directions and angles were all different. However, for many people, the deepest impression they had of gear was the almost paranoid circular, stacked nested structure inside gear. And the most eye-catching of the series of structures was the perfectly straight atrium that connected all the floors before Luo Nan's eyes. The atrium of gear was different from most similar structures. The atrium of gear was located on the westernmost side of the building. Its edge was the outer wall of the building. Its height exceeded 50 meters and the area it occupied wasn't small. If the lighting wasn't turned on and the angle of sunlight wasn't suitable, the pitch-black hole would be very frightening when looking down from above. Thinking about it in a crooked way, this was a good place to commit suicide. The outer wall of the atrium was surrounded by high-strength bulletproof glass, most likely to prevent similar situations from occurring. Every floor didn't leave a single gap. Jumping down really required skill. Luo Nan stood at the bottom of the atrium and raised his head to look at the sky. He could see the evening sky. The dusky sky was smeared with colorful paint. Aside from a sliver of the setting sun, the only thing that could be seen was the lights of the metropolis. The atrium had a diameter of 12 meters. It was already extremely spacious, but due to the height issue, it appeared rather slender no matter what angle one looked at it from. Only when one reached the bottom and personally experienced it would one know just how enormous this space was. Luo Nan smiled at Shuelei. "You can train here every day. The air isn't stuffy, right? When it rains you can seal off the rooftop. It's more convenient than outside. I can give it a try. Shuele grinned. He had been treating himself as a bodyguard ever since he entered gear. He didn't utter a single word and was extremely vigilant. He even operated the testing equipment provided by the society in secret, in case the construction team left behind some things that couldn't see the light of day. Right now he was chatting with Luonan and he finally relaxed. He imitated Luonan and raised his head to look at the sky. He suddenly had a strange thought. The rooftop ceiling platform should also be made of glass. It's like an astronomical telescope. Actually, it does have this function. Hu Huaying remembered that there was information about this in the information. She immediately showed off. It can be realized through an internal mounting module. The equipment room is on the 6th floor underground. Of course, special lenses are needed. The modification can be completed in an hour. Of course, this telescope can't be turned. It can only look at a small area above our heads. An hour? Shuele was a bit moved. He really wanted to see it. Hu Huaying hurriedly added, it can't be done now. This function was remodeled in 91. Not long after it was completed, the order club collapsed. The newly purchased equipment was completely sold off. They lost several $100,000 after depreciation. Are you playing with me? Shuele rolled his eyes. Before he could say anything, Luonan sneered, drawing legs on a snake. Hu Huaying was stunned. Honestly speaking, she didn't understand what Luonan meant by these words. But it didn't affect her from echoing, so, the snake's claws have been chopped off. Luonan didn't say anything. He looked up at the night sky above his head in silence. It was unknown where his thoughts drifted. Hu Huaying and Shuele locked gazes. They were just about to speak when Luonan raised his arm to look at his wristband. His brows furrowed. Someone's looking for me. Third bro, you chat with Shuele first. I'm going to take a call. Hu Huaying really wanted to agree. Then she would drag Luonan and Shuele out for a meal and a game to strengthen their friendship. But she thought about it again. Luonan had an introverted temperament. He couldn't be impatient when it came to making friends. This was to avoid going overboard. She immediately said, you go do what you need to do. I won't stay any longer. Sure enough, Luonan didn't urge her to stay. He nodded and thanked her once more. Then he hurriedly walked into the fire escape passageway. It looked like this was a very private call. Shuele and Hu Huaying rode the elevator together to send Luonan off. Soon, peace was restored in the atrium. Luonan waited for the elevator to go up. He didn't turn on his wristband as he stood in the fire escape passageway. Instead, he squinted his eyes and his telepathic thoughts leaped out. He arrived at a business hotel several dozen kilometers away. His temporary partner, Peony, had used the rubber band to give Ink a special stimulation. Luonan sensed it. As for the reason, it was very simple. The meeting was adjourned. Luonan looked at his watch. It was around 6 o'clock in the evening. The meeting had been going on for nearly 9 hours. Peony walked into the elevator with Ink still holding onto her shoulder. They looked quite compatible. But it was different from when they came. There was another person in the elevator. It was none other than Long 7. The two didn't have any intentions of communicating further. Long 7 was paying more attention to Ink in the elevator. He exited the elevator and went to the underground parking lot. He walked straight to the front row of parking spaces. There was a supercar there. It wasn't low-key at all. Luonan vaguely remembered that this was where old Jin parked his car. Where did the man in the car go? Old Jin's commoner SUV drove in right when he was baffled. It flashed its lights twice and stopped in front of Peony at the elevator entrance. Clearly he hadn't waited a day in vain. He had bought a Big Mac from who knows where, and he was eating it with relish. Peony let Ink go to the front passenger seat while she sat in the back. Old Jean opened the window, dispersing the smell in the car. Then the car started, but he heard Long 7 call out at this time. See you tomorrow. Peony waved her hand rather reservedly, and the car soon drove out of the underground parking lot. Only now did Peony get down to business. She spoke quickly, the meeting will continue tomorrow. I will send the relevant information and meeting records to the internal cloud space. Please check and receive them. Luonan actually wanted to seriously ask about the situation at the meeting, but he thought of Zhang Yinying's previous attitude. He hesitated a bit, but in the end he didn't say much. The car entered a state of silence. Now it was old Jin's turn to ask, where do I get off? Luonan remembered that Peony seemed to be someone from Acumen College. It was impossible for this woman not to be suspicious when he got off the car with her. Since the firm couldn't hide his true identity, he might as well play it to the end. I'll leave once we're out of the parking lot. Then see you tomorrow. No one exchanged pleasantries. They waited for the car to drive onto the main road, and Ink jumped out of the car. It spread its wings and flew into the night sky. At the same time, Luonan logged into the cloud space over at Gear. He looked through the meeting records. He had gotten the relevant documents from Trigate Corporation. This company did things fairly properly. At the very least, the meeting records were clean and clear. Peony even marked them one by one, highlighting the key points. Luonan really didn't know where she got the energy and time. Aside from the information, she even wrote a short report, introducing the situation of the participants. The focus of attention was naturally Long 7. Peony had already come to a preliminary conclusion, but the point of entry was that fashionable ear. In Peony's report, the earring was made from some sort of superplastic memory alloy material. It could greatly deform under high temperatures. It was a mechanical key favored by burners. In other words, Long 7 was very likely to be a deep blue walker. Plus, this person was relatively familiar with Xia City. He also had the special ability of radiation decontamination. Peony had already locked onto her target. Chapter 342. It had only been a few hours and he had been skinned? Luonan grinned and looked at Peony's report in detail. The report simply indicated that Snake 7 had once appeared in the Society's operation to rescue Rue 1. Of course, he was on the opposing side of the Society. Luonan didn't have a deep impression of this person. After all, 7 or 8 deep blue walkers had gathered that night, and there were many casualties. Only the heavens knew who was who. The only memory he had was a review report after the operation. There was this code name on it, representing that this person was deeply involved in the conflict. That was all. Right now, Luonan didn't have emotions like, so it was him. His attention was a bit distracted. Thinking deeper, there was no reason for this Snake 7 or Dragon 7 to not use similar methods when they returned. The focus of their analysis was certainly Peony, but as an eye-catching symbol, Ink, the giant crow, would most likely be used as a starting point. Could it be concealed? Ink was quite high profile that night, especially in the first half of the night. There were more than 1 or 2 eyewitnesses in the underground fighting arena. As Luonan furrowed his brows in thought, a refresh symbol appeared in the cloud space document. With a light tap, the entire document was updated. The amount of text instantly increased by quite a bit. Upon closer inspection, there was even more detailed information regarding Snake 7 listed out in the document. So Luonan knew that Snake 7 was a very talented ability user, but he was determined to become a deep blue walker. He joined Quantum Corporation of his own accord and became a special model tester at a young age. Later, he strongly requested to join the operation team and transferred to the Sky Blue Security Company. As for what his personality was like, how he handled things and how his family relations were, they were all covered in the document. Luonan originally thought that this character was quite mysterious, but in the blink of an eye, he was exposed to the light of day. There was practically nowhere he could hide. Strands of cold air seeped through Luonan's teeth. His heart felt cold. He withdrew from the cloud space, his mind a bit chaotic. But one thing was very clear. With his current fame, special position, and use, every intelligence agency would absolutely not let him go. One small clue would reveal the general trend. From the perspective of Snake 7's fate, perhaps every intelligence agency had a document regarding him on their desks right now. They were constantly updated. Each and every one of his actions would be like Snake 7's. He would be completely exposed to the eyes of others. There would be no more secrets to speak of. Luonan stood at the bottom of the atrium in a daze. A few dozen seconds later, his wristband vibrated. Shuelei called. I'm training in the open space in front of Gear. Just give me a shout when you get home. Oh. Luonan responded subconsciously. Then he came back to his senses and expressed his refusal. It's already dinner time. You can go back. You don't need to wait for me. School had already ended. The reason Shuelei said this was because he understood Luonan's pace of life. Luonan's training time was around this time every day. He needed to attend classes and study, so he made up his mind to stick to it. It's so boring to go home alone. It's better to go together. Luonan spat. Then we'll separate at the school gate? Right now Luonan was living at his aunt's house, while Shuelei was in the Twin River District. One went east and the other went west. It would be strange if they went the same way. At the end of the day, Shuelei was still focused on being a bodyguard, afraid that shameless people like the headquarters would appear again. Shuelei also felt that it was quite ridiculous, so he asked, "Speaking of which, when are you going to be independent? You don't have to go to the hospital for treatment now. Auntie isn't afraid that I'll go for treatment. She's afraid that I'll suddenly go in for treatment again." Luo Nan knew that his health credit had gone bankrupt, and he was unable to explain the concept of the coupling of soul and flesh to Mrs. Luo Shuqing. He could only place his hopes on someone else. "My cousin will be back next week. I'll give it another try with her attracting the firepower." The two chatted a bit more and Shuelei went to practice boxing. Luo Nan was actually quite envious of Shuelei's current state. This week, with Xie Juanping's help, Shuelei had already changed his relationship with the society. Shuelei had no worries in the future. Aside from being Luo Nan's bodyguard every day, Shuelei had a large amount of time to spend on martial cultivation. Compared to his close friend, Luo Nan's mood fluctuated quite a bit. Especially now, he was stimulated by the intelligence file. His heart was quite restless and he didn't have the mind to think about practical matters. He paced a few steps under the atrium before raising his head. In a daze, the perfectly straight atrium and the ring-shaped night sky were like a prison, sealing him inside. No, that's not right. How could there be a prison in his mother's work? Luo Nan's thoughts changed when he thought of his mother. He looked at the atrium again. The structure was one and the same. It went from the bottom to the top as if it led to the depths of the starry sky. It was limitless. When all was said and done, those thoughts just now were born from fear in his heart, drawing a prison. Luo Nan shook his head and scattered the illusions. He looked at the time. There were still a few minutes until the appointed time. He sat down cross-legged and recalled the breathing technique personally taught to him by Gym Master Xiao. He tried to calm his mind. Several breaths later, the tides of his mind did indeed calm down a bit. He even closed his eyes and began to move his mind. The energy within his body was polished, and the heart lantern of the eye's orifice burned with brilliance. Gradually, the distracting thoughts in his mind were burned to nothing. According to coupling theory, there were two relatively complete gears in the structure of Luo Nan's body and soul. One was soul strength, born from formatting theory. It had long since surpassed the limits of what the fleshly body could endure. Its power was great and difficult to control. Luo Nan relied on the hollow depository function of the external neuron to form a stable structure. Even so, it overflowed outwards at every moment. It was like an iceberg towering above the vast ocean. It was vast and majestic and the pressure it exerted was extreme. Luo Nan gave it a name. It was called the God Gear. The other was the structure of the eye's orifice. Xiao Xinyu imparted a technique that relied on the natural wonders of the human body. It also happened to borrow Luo Nan's special circumstances to construct a brand new medium for transferring and refining soul strength. It formed the heart lantern of the eye's orifice and stimulated the potential of the human body. Luo Nan called it the body gear. According to Gym Master Xiao's words, the cultivation of the eye's orifice was only a beginning in the cultivation of the fleshly body. Compared to the towering iceberg and vast ocean of the God Gear, the eye's orifice could only be described as a small reservoir. It played an auxiliary role. The God Gear and the body gear built an embryonic order frame within Luo Nan's body. They meshed with each other through the method of coupling, influencing each other. Though the frame was formed, it was still simple and crude. It relied more on external objects. Without the suppression of the external neuron, it was guaranteed that Luo Nan would be instantly faced with a calamity. Even with the external neuron suppressing him, electricity and fire flowed between the God Gear and the body gear. Their energies clashed and several thunderclouds and storms swept through every day. It was hard for outsiders to understand the suffering within. It was precisely these dangers hidden deep within Luo Nan's body that left no leeway for trial and error. There were no sentiments to speak of. They forced Luo Nan to use the most focused attitude to cultivate, to carefully cultivate his foundation, to fix the fragile balance bit by bit. As long as he began to cultivate, all trivial and distracting thoughts would be annihilated into a puff of smoke. It was quite worthwhile to use them to dispel negative emotions. Luo Nan no longer had the concept of time once he entered the meditative state. Fortunately, Luo Nan remembered that he still had training classes to attend. He only did a bit of maintenance on the structure of the eye's orifice. He dissolved the overly powerful interference power of electricity and fire, and then he finished his homework. His senses were exceptionally sharp when he entered the meditative state. His mind was tranquil, and all the surrounding information entered his mind. He felt a marvelous sound seep into his ears. It was like the fine ticking of the minute and second hands of a clock. It rotated in circles, without beginning and without end. Luonan was not surprised at all. From his perspective, this was the breathing of gear. The building had 12 floors above and below the ground. Especially on the ground, including the atrium, there were 15 main halls. It was like a well-adjusted machine. Every part worked smoothly and the teeth meshed together. Only then could there be such a harmonious rhythm. From Luonan's perspective, this was the sound of nature. It was the reward for his earnest cultivation. He subconsciously wore a smile on his face as he listened to this clear and orderly rhythm. However, just a few seconds later, there was a noise that made a sizzling sound. At first, it was just a single noise that suddenly affected the beat. But a few seconds later, the noise arose one after another. It was like the sudden insertion of dry and hoarse croaks during a band's performance. The noise rose and fell at random, turning a perfectly good performance into a nightmare. Luonan suddenly opened his eyes. The sound of nature was no longer there, but the noise still existed. It was layer upon layer of crisscrossing radio waves. The source came from every corner of the building. Cameras, bugs, optical cables, antennas. There were all sorts of forms. They gathered all sorts of information and transmitted it out. They were like pairs of cold and gloomy eyes, spying on Luonan's every move from every angle. It was like he was in a prison. Luonan raised his head. The darkness could not obstruct the strengthened vision of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Separated by the integrated glass, a certain burglar camera on the 3rd floor of the basement was pointed at him. It was done openly. There was more than one monitoring device working in the surroundings. Luonan pursed his lips. He wanted to get angry, but he inexplicably felt that this was absurd and ridiculous. The corner of his lips unconsciously curled up. He was just worried that Long Seven's misfortune would fall on his head. He never thought that his thoughts would become a prophecy. Hey he. What should come would come. Luonan squeezed out a dry voice from his mouth. The negative emotions that he had just dispelled were like a storm that suddenly descended. Rolling thunderclouds crackled as they assaulted his mind. Bang! The burglar camera on the 3rd floor of the basement exploded into pieces. Similar shattering sounds rang out from every corner of the building at practically the same time. Of course, there was also the muffled sound of tripping brakes. Direct methods brought about crude consequences. The sparse lighting within the building of gear was instantly extinguished. Then the central control system operated spontaneously, activating the backup circuitry. But unfortunately it failed. The listening devices were so concentrated that even the backup system was hard-pressed to escape. Luonan stood within the darkness, coldly feeling everything. But then Shuelei's phone call came in the next moment. He was so nervous that his voice changed. Report your location. Mentally connect. I'm fine. Luonan didn't know how to explain things to Shuelei. His wristband vibrated once more, and the central control system activated manual operation mode. It asked him if he wanted to use the maintenance robots to carry out emergency repairs. Luonan agreed in passing and found a reason. The quality of those people's work is abysmal. Yeah, that's it. And at this time the hexeer vibrated. On the psychic wave network, Bamboo Pole followed the teaching plan and went online on time to greet Luonan. This was the usual procedure, but today's message was a bit odd. Chapter 343. Luonan was stunned by the inexplicable message, but he soon connected it with the unforeseen event from before. How did he know? They're spying on me. Oh, I think they told me about it a few days ago? The direct logic aroused his anger, but a portion of his blurry memories became clear. The two sides collided, turning into a wave of meaningless emotional turmoil. Yes, He Yuan had proposed to install monitoring and alarm equipment in gear at the beginning of the Xia City branch's testing. This was to deal with unusual situations. Luonan agreed at the time. Bamboo Pole was responsible for the installation, and he even integrated the control system into his wristband. This was great. When Bamboo Pole lost his temper, he didn't differentiate between friend and foe. He killed them all. Luonan wanted to leave a message in reply, but he didn't know what to say. He only said a few useless words after a while. It's nothing. If it's nothing then it's nothing. Are we still going to class today? Bamboo Pole's attitude really wasn't that of a qualified teacher. He had always been like this. The training courses arranged by He Yuan had been going on for nearly a month now. Paper cuts, soul strength activation techniques, had become extremely simple due to Luonan's achievements in coupling ability. He was the first to finish. He Yuan's World Order in and out of the Psychic Wave Network had finished 2 days ago. Crag Burst and Red Fox's practical courses needed to be adjusted due to the changes in the situation, including Luonan's increase in ability. They had yet to officially begin. Only Bamboo Pole's Notes on the Most Important People of the World class was still progressing steadily. Emotional turmoil wasn't a reason to refuse class. Luonan replied, "I'm on. Can we start now?" "No problem." Bamboo Pole immediately skipped over the unpleasant matters. As usual, he sent over a set of pictures of people, videos, and other image materials. He confirmed the main content of today's class, and then he activated the video call function. He raised his hand in greeting, and then he started chatting face-to-face with Luonan. Bamboo Pole was the only one who spoke most of the time. The content was probably, "Don't be fooled by his sanctimonious appearance. In fact, his lovers are all beautiful. Don't be surprised." This was Bamboo Pole's usual teaching method. It was known as teaching through fun. This bro was the most knowledgeable fellow Luonan had ever seen. He usually presented himself as a hacker, and he conveniently searched for all sorts of beautiful women. But he had deep attainments in religion, history, mystic arts, and so on. He was also a master paparazzi. His class was mainly about characters. He would only talk about 2 or 3 characters in each class, sometimes even just one. He would talk about official matters, trivial matters, news, gossip, and so on. There were many different levels and angles. Often, after a class, the characters he talked about would stand out and be hard to forget. But in terms of progress, it was really slow. Looking at the course plan, He Yuan's course capacity was about the same as his. However, the former's course had already ended, and Bamboo Pole's 100 characters hadn't even talked about half of them. Bamboo Pole said bluntly, "If you learn half of these courses, if you're really interested, you'll find out for yourself. Even if you don't want to learn, you'll learn it anyway. If you're really not interested, you can just treat it as idle chatter and have some fun. This way, the curriculum can be long or short, and it can be adjusted at any time." He knew very well that Luonan's mood wasn't right today, so his lecture was relatively simple. The content of the lecture didn't unfold. In the end, he even took the initiative to ask, "Why don't we stop here first?" Luonan woke up from his absent-minded state. He knew that he wasn't paying attention. He was quite embarrassed, so he promptly apologized. Bamboo Pole responded with a beaming smile, "No need to be so formal. Actually, I'm just an intelligence agent that serves the boss. I'm in charge of pushing information. If the boss has time, then I'll report a bit more information. If he doesn't have time, then I'll report a bit less. The boss has been quite busy lately, right?" Luonan was helpless. The group of people who participated in the Frost River reality incident would call him boss every now and then. This was originally Red Fox's way of mocking him and He Yuan, but it had grown louder and louder these days. The malice had been erased and it had become a nickname that everyone knew. For a mischievous person like Bamboo Pole, he wouldn't feel comfortable if he didn't call him a few times a day. Luonan could only ignore him, but Bamboo Pole was right. Luonan had been courting death these past few days. He had found Worker Zhai to be his tutor, learning the relevant knowledge of engineering. The amount of time and energy required to have some accomplishments in this major subject was far greater than a package of crash courses. However, his bad mood today had nothing to do with the pressure of learning. Right now, Luonan wasn't in the mood to attend classes. He really wanted to communicate with someone, but he didn't know where to start. He subconsciously flipped through the information on the person he had just obtained. This person's name and past deeds were all forgotten after a single glance. However, Bamboo Pole's habit of organizing the information from multiple angles and layers made Luonan make some associations. How many bugs were piled up in this information? The corner of Luonan's lips twitched. Does every famous person do research like this? Most of it is public information. Of course, a lot of it is the sweat and blood of paparazzi. Bamboo Pole raised an eyebrow. You're only average in this course. Otherwise, you could use it as a template. It wouldn't be a problem for you to become the #1 paparazzi in a large entertainment media company. Luonan suddenly had a strange thought. I can be considered a famous person now, right? To a certain extent, yes. Brother Bamboo Pole, what kind of person am I? How do you research me? Luonan actually wanted to know just how much he had exposed to the various intelligence agencies. However, his ability to express himself was truly worrisome. It caused Bamboo Pole's understanding to be a bit off. Yo, you feel confused about life. You want to do a self-analysis? I. Luo Nan wanted to correct Bamboo Pole, but he had second thoughts. Zhang Yingying's words had made his mind restless before he came to gear. His terrible mood had been buried ever since then. It would be good if he could get to the bottom of it. You can say that. On the other side of the screen, Bamboo Pole sat on an ergonomic chair. He adjusted himself into a comfortable position. I've mentioned the method of researching people to you before. It's nothing more than the three aspects of nature, society, and psychology. Luo Nan nodded. It was true that he had learned this before, but it was quite complicated when he actually began to delve into it. Bamboo Pole chuckled. You asked in a hurry. I wasn't prepared. However, since you asked, let's treat this matter as material. Let's do a simple analysis. Okay. Luo Nan was indifferent. Let's first talk about your problem. A normal person, a person of society, has an instinctive mentality of privacy and a mentality of vigilance. People pay attention to other people's evaluations of themselves, but they very rarely take the initiative to ask others to judge them, unless they want to show off or they lack self-confidence. This is the meaning of asking for guidance. And all of these are considered morbid. Luo Nan grunted and couldn't help but laugh. Let's just ask for guidance. It looks like the symptoms are a bit lighter. Bamboo Pole shook his head. There's no need to ask me. Ask yourself. Ask yourself right now. Ask yourself. How is your body's condition under natural conditions? Is it vigorous like a dragon or fierce like a tiger? Or do you have a hidden illness? Be frank. Your body hasn't completely recovered yet. Luo Nan couldn't do without the external neuron right now. The difference in scale between the God gear and the body gear was a stubborn illness. This was especially true for the uncontrollable growth of his mental strength. He still had no clue as to how to solve this problem. Fortunately, the number of human-faced arachnids that wandered through Xia City was gradually decreasing. Otherwise, Luo Nan might really explode if the wraith sign of the Blood Flame Order doubled in hunting speed. He had learned the acupoint cultivation technique from Gym Master Xiu, but he was unable to digest it on a large scale. Bamboo Pole didn't ask further. He changed the angle. What's your situation like in terms of social conditions? This time Luo Nan didn't hesitate. He answered, not good. Although he had the Xia City branch behind him and quite a few friends, headquarters, Quantum Corporation, the Order of Justice, and the Blood Flame Order were all latent threats. If all of them were to explode, even 10 Luo Nans would turn to dust. In terms of psychological conditions, forget it. It's obvious. Bamboo Pole smacked his lips. There's a situation in all three major areas. The answer doesn't need to be said. Brother, to tell you the truth, the problem is heavy. Luo Nan didn't expect that this would be the result after a bit of analysis based on Bamboo Pole's template. Wasn't this completely warped? He forgot about the matter of the intelligence organization for a moment. He stared blankly for a moment before asking, how should I solve it? Bamboo Pole spread his hands. You want me to be your advisor? How can I be counted on to do something that even secretary he can't do? Luo Nan knew this, but he still wanted to ask, Brother Bamboo Pole, if you were in my position, what would you do? If I were you, I would turn around and leave. I would run as far as I could. I would hide as deep as I could. This is what they call a cicada shedding its carapace. Retreat in order to advance. Turn light into darkness. Forget it. I know you wouldn't do this. Just treat it like I'm talking nonsense. Bamboo Pole's mind was clear-headed from beginning to end. He sighed. How about this? I'll give you 2 examples for reference. I've talked about the first one before. Her Majesty Empress Wu. At the very beginning, when Her Majesty Empress Wu just made her debut, many people said that she was Wu Meinyang, that she amused people with her beauty. They said she was Wu Jiaoyi Empress Wu. They called Her Majesty Empress Wu all the way to Her Majesty Empress Wu, but she remained unmoved. It could be said that a rock doesn't turn in a flowing river. She's round on the outside but square on the inside. Round on the outside but square on the inside? Luo Nan instinctively felt that these words weren't right. Bamboo Pole insisted on his own opinion. Did you forget? I told you before. Her Majesty Empress Wu is very domineering, but she was able to maneuver freely in the past. Her methods were extraordinary. First, she borrowed President Ouyang's power, then she became independent and established the hidden Indigo firm. She recruited non-combatants. She never kept a low profile, but she never crossed the line. She has a multitude of talented people under her command. It's not like she didn't have enemies in Xia City before, including headquarters. Now she has either pacified them or swept them flat. No matter what the wind and waves are like, she remains unmoved. She steadily strengthens, finally becoming a great power. It's said that her actions are like heaven, and her people are like ghosts. She deeply understands the true essence of techniques, and power. Bamboo Pole was not stingy with his words of praise for Her Majesty Empress Wu. He was endless. This type of person who is as unmoving as a mountain can be said to be the path of an emperor. Some people think that the words Her Majesty Empress Wu are mocking, but I feel that it's quite appropriate. In my personal opinion, this is the most brilliant path. Luo Nan imagined Her Majesty Empress Wu's methods of maneuvering freely. He was fascinated for a time. This path is very difficult, right? Bamboo Pole laughed. She has a clear goal from the beginning. Her methods are incisive. She uses both the carrot and the stick. You can't learn it. It's too late for you to learn it. Luo Nan was speechless. I used this as an example to give you a benchmark. I used it as a reference. Let's talk about the second example. I haven't talked about it before, but you're certainly familiar with this person. She's your secretary. Chapter 344. Through the psychic wave network, Bamboo Pole looked straight at him and grinned. I won't say much about other things, but since you've attended both my class and Secretary He's class, don't you have any thoughts? Probably. Luo Nan's heart wasn't as hesitant as his mouth was. After all, He Yuan and Bamboo Pole were both teaching cultural classes, and their styles were completely different. In private he couldn't help but make some comparisons. Bamboo Pole encouraged, Tell me. There was no need to say much about Bamboo Pole's teaching methods. As for He Yuan, Luo Nan thought for a bit and said, Sister Yuan teaches. All sorts of information is readily available at her fingertips. She covers a wide range of details and the context is clear. She is very captivating. What else? His arguments are precise and his words are eloquent. Furthermore, they are often sharp and penetrating to the bone. Most of the time he points directly at the deeper business behind important events. The relationship between the secular world and the inner world, the traditional political structure and the new powers of ability users, is clearly understood. Bamboo Pole's eyebrows twitched. What you've just said, I think I've done pretty well. Of course, I can forget about the righteous promise part. But don't just praise me. Do you think I don't have any flaws? Or is it something different from me? He saw that Luo Nan was a bit hesitant, so he urged Luo Nan with all his might, Relax. I won't blabber. Plus, even if I say it, people will be open-minded. They won't care. I don't know what's missing. In the end, Luo Nan was an honest child. He didn't want to gossip behind Luo Nan's back. He pondered for a while before saying, I'm different from you. The knowledge points in class are more concentrated, and the pace is much faster than yours. Bamboo Pole laughed heartily and clapped his hands. That's right. Ha! Luo Nan didn't understand what was so funny about this. Bamboo Pole reminded him further, Isn't the timetable he arranged for you for the same reason? From morning till night you followed him closely? It's all right. It's not particularly tight. Besides, if I don't do this, how can I quickly grasp knowledge? Of course you think it's normal because you and she are the same kind of person. They're all like a taut bow. When they shoot out an arrow, it's sharp and indestructible. But what about during normal times? Luo Nan was slightly stunned. This was the first time he had heard someone place him on the same level as He Yuan. Bamboo Pole continued, No one in the branch can keep up with Secretary He's fast pace. It's as if there's a beast chasing after her. Ever since she had joined, she had assisted in the affairs of the branch and drawn up various systems. Of course it was good, but it was a loose association and they weren't in a state of war. Who could persevere every day? Out of 100 people, 10 are used to it, 10 are persevering, 50 are slackers, and 30 are dragging us down. Before we can face the external enemies, we will collapse internally. Luo Nan seriously suspected that Bamboo Pole had seized the opportunity to ridicule him. As a hacker, this guy was naturally skeptical of all constraints. He was a standard anarchist and he never hid this when he taught. But Luo Nan really admired one thing about Bamboo Pole. Ridicule was ridicule, but Bamboo Pole and He Yuan were the best partners in these operations. Their tacit understanding was the highest. We are talking about an example. Bamboo Pole adjusted his posture on the ergonomic chair and said helplessly, In a sense, people like Secretary He are very self-centered. Don't doubt me, I'm talking about you. Unconsciously or unconsciously, You always think that the earth will rotate according to your rhythm. Luo Nan, who was self-centered, could only listen. Let's not talk about it. Secretary, he is actually a great person. She has a bit of a messiah mentality. She always feels that her way of doing things is good for everyone. She has a sense of responsibility for all living beings under the heavens. Perhaps with her family background, she really does know more secrets, dangers, and unspeakable difficulties than we do. But for a hopeless fellow like me, she's a bit boring. I can't raise any interest in pursuing her. Bamboo Pole's eyes slanted as he spoke to this point. What about you? The silence lasted for a moment. Luo Nan was baffled. Why aren't you talking? Bamboo Pole spread his hands. I'm asking you. You're much more autistic than Secretary He, and her goals are clearer than yours. Her techniques are more superb and her mind is clearer. She knows her own shortcomings and she is constantly improving. But you're different. You're only 16 years old, right? You're underage, immature, and your temperament isn't set. You have a head full of bizarre thoughts. Don't say it out loud. Isn't it tiring to use your brain to guess? Luo Nan's lips twitched. This wasn't the first time he had heard such an evaluation, but it was rare for Bamboo Pole to use an example as a foil. Luo Nan felt a bit sorry for He Yuan. Just as he was about to speak, Bamboo Pole raised his hand. There's no need to say things like justifying formatting theory and protecting my mother's work. Then what else was there to say? Luo Nan choked in an instant. Bamboo Pole stared at him for a long time before sighing. You don't have any other goals? Luo Nan imitated him and spread his hands. Just these aren't enough? What else do you want? Bamboo Pole sighed once more. Isn't this enough? Ha! What's there to dissect? You've said a long string, but the conclusion is already very clear. You and Secretary He are the same kind of people. You both live your days with your bowstring stretched taut. Your goals are the source of your pressure. This is because those things are very hard to deal with. They are very hard to achieve. Luo Nan didn't like hearing these words. It's very hard to achieve? As long as it involves confrontation, it's very hard. Bamboo Pole took care of Luo Nan's mood. He erased a key phrase and highlighted another. Who are the people standing against you? If the disparity is too great, the harder you work, the greater the pressure. Unless you possess the ability to flatten everything, or at the very least, you have the ability to make most people compromise. Just like Her Majesty Empress Wu. Luo Nan was silent. Even Her Majesty Empress Wu rarely directly confronts a certain colossus. For her, growing and strengthening is her #1 priority. She takes the initiative. She prioritizes things. She has to do things step by step. It doesn't matter if she takes a few detours. Secretary He's route is very clear. It's to integrate the society's stragglers and stragglers. Perhaps her methods are worth discussing, but she has a strong backbone. She has many resources and her selfishness is even less. What about you? You charge your way towards your goal. You flatten all the traps and mechanisms. Fortunately, you're a stubborn piece of iron. You'll treat ordinary checkpoints as hammering blows. If it were someone else, they would have long since been smashed into meat paste. But in the future, will Quantum Corporation, the Order of Justice, and those people from headquarters continue to hammer you? Or will they set up a blast furnace and melt you in one breath? Luo Nan's eyelids twitched. This was the situation he was worried about. However, Bamboo Pole's words seemed to have deviated once more. He was no longer simply analyzing Luo Nan. Luo Nan was still uncertain, so he followed along with Bamboo Pole's tone and asked, Then Brother Bamboo Pole, what do you think I should do next? Only when the words left his mouth did Luo Nan remember that he had asked Bamboo Pole for guidance not too long ago. Back then, Bamboo Pole had refused, and Her Majesty Empress Wu and He Yuan were 2 examples. Sure enough, Bamboo Pole extended a hand and pointed at him. You're asking me this again. What's the point of asking me? I dare to bet that with your temper, no matter what extravagant flowery words other people say, you'll still follow your temper when things come to a head. Flatten. Whether it's a hammer or a blast furnace in front of you, there's no difference. Luo Nan really didn't have much hope in his control. There was just one point where he admitted that Bamboo Pole was wrong. I don't want to play with flatten. Who wouldn't be happy if they could reach their goal more easily? But when things come to a head, I have no choice. Then how do you get yourself to the point where things come to a head time and time again? Luo Nan really did consider this question seriously for a moment. Since when did he always fall into a situation where there was no way out? He didn't obtain an answer, but there was one thing that was very clear. If these days continued, the times where things came to a head would grow more and more frequent. The opportunities for him to make choices would grow smaller and smaller until there were none. Bamboo Pole looked at Luo Nan's expression and could roughly understand Luo Nan's current bewilderment. So, I'll still say the same thing. If I were you, I would certainly run as far as I can. It's not because of fear or cowardice. It's because you have enough space to act as a buffer. Only then can you grow and strengthen. Only then can you have the leeway to choose. That's impossible. Luo Nan didn't even need to think before he refused. Bamboo Pole had expected this long ago. His eyes didn't even blink as he immediately said, "Then you need a shield and a rein. The shield will give you a chance to catch your breath on the battlefield. The rein will strangle your neck when you're hot-headed." Luo Nan blinked his eyes. "Brother Bamboo Pole, you can speak a bit more bluntly." Bamboo Pole rolled his eyes. "I've already spoken bluntly enough." "Fine. What I mean is that you need to find a backer." "Backer? Rely on who?" Bamboo Pole looked at him like he was looking at an idiot. "Who in Xia City can you rely on right now? President Ouyang?" "Get lost, you idiot." Luo Nan grunted. He felt quite wronged. There were only two extraordinaries who could protect him in Xia City. What was wrong with him thinking of Ouyang Chen in the first instance? Luo Nan's thoughts spun again. Only then did he realize that the example that Bamboo Pole spared no effort in talking was absolutely not just for show. "You want me to rely on Her Majesty Empress Wu?" Luo Nan knew that he had finally guessed correctly when he saw Bamboo Pole's expression. However, he didn't quite understand Bamboo Pole's train of thought. What's the difference between President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu? Also, aren't I under their protection right now? The Xia City branch taking care of you is official business. Since it's official business, it will be restricted by procedures. Accordingly, there will certainly be flaws. The matter with headquarters is the best proof. The same reasoning can be used on President Ouyang. Who let him be the president? Bamboo Pole used his finger to point at Luo Nan from afar. More importantly, in a loose organization like the society, there's no one who can control you. You can do stupid things and there's no way to restrain you. Yuan is quite suitable, but she's standing in the wrong position from the start. She's the boss's secretary and the like. It's so awkward. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. Brother Bamboo Pole, you're an anarchist. Everything you say is controlled. Is that really good? At the very least, I never caused trouble. Bamboo Pole stabbed a knife into Luo Nan's chest and twisted it. I rarely do stupid things. Even so, I sometimes find a place to rest and earn a bit of extra money. Idiot. I'm a lobbyist right now, Boss Luo. Chapter 345. Luo Nan bid farewell to Shui Lei at the school gates and took a car back home. The car he rode in was sent by the Xia City branch. The driver was a professional security guard with extraordinary strength. The two were not familiar with each other, so they did not talk much on the way. Luo Nan was the only one staring blankly most of the time. It was just as Bamboo Pole said. Today, Luo Nan had indeed become a lobbyist in addition to teaching. And the person who hired him was the legendary Her Majesty Empress Wu. Bamboo Pole was eloquent, and his persuasive skills were sufficient. Luo Nan was indeed a bit moved at the time. But the awkward thing was that he had pretty much forgotten all of these words by the time he got in the car. It was not that he was not attentive, but that he was overly nervous. Luo Nan had always been the focal point of the society during his time there, but this was the first time he had accepted a genuine recruitment like today. He lacked the relevant social experience. His mind was a complete mess of distracting thoughts when he encountered this matter. He did not know how to respond. So much so that Luo Nan remembered the most clearly not the benefits Her Majesty Empress Wu would give him. Instead, it was Bamboo Pole's words of consolation. Boss Luo, you are not of age yet, but you are already a complete member of society. Things like this are unavoidable. You can seek the opinions of others. Ask more. Refer more. Don't rush to make a judgment. Her Majesty Empress Wu went through me and not through Zhang Yingying because that girl is too impatient. She wants to avoid playing the emotional card and affecting your judgment. These words were filled with sincerity, but the reason why Luo Nan remembered them was because Bamboo Pole's words, member of society, poked at his sore spot. Luo Nan opened the car window and rested his elbow on the window frame, feeling the incoming night wind. A moment later he used his other hand to draw a diagram. It was a tetrahedron and it was divided into 5 layers. According to formatting theory, this was the societal formatting diagram. From bottom to top, it was clearly divided into 5 layers: student, employee, technician, priest, and politician. This was the classification of the resources he controlled. It was barely possible to correspond to the outside society. Luo Nan still remembered his first conversation with Zhang Yingying on the ship Lanshan. He had solemnly vowed that he needed pressure and opportunity to enter a completely new circle to satisfy the needs of his rapid rise in social status. His voice was still in his ears. He had truly taken this step, but how could he have imagined that he would be at a loss today? He didn't think that his initial choice was wrong, but was this kind of passive situation inevitable? If one viewed life as a game, then the path he had chosen after his class advancement would definitely be a terrible one. Furthermore, there would be no save point, and he wouldn't be able to start all over again, nor would he be able to stop. Luo Nan had to chew on the bitter fruit of life, and he had reached a juncture. He had to make a decision. He could not stop moving forward. Luo Nan couldn't quite understand Her Majesty Empress Wu's thoughts. He was unable to guess the calculations within. He could only follow Bamboo Pole's advice and seek the opinions of others. The first person he thought of was He Yuan, but when he applied for the call, she should be dealing with some business and couldn't be distracted. She only left a message saying that she would contact him later. Luo Nan could only skip it for now. His thoughts swept through the list of friends in the Hexier, pondering over who he should consult. Zhang Yingying had to jump over first. Crag Burst seemed to be making a move tonight as well. As for Octopus, Luo Nan had no confidence in his ability to express himself with words, so he simply turned them into words. He left a few messages for his friends asking for advice. Not long after it was sent, the driver suddenly said, "Boss Luo, we're home." Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment. Only then did he realize that he had taken a bit too long to organize his words. The car had already driven to the entrance of the residential area. It was just past dinner time. There were quite a few residents strolling and exercising on the streets. "Thank you, Brother Chi." Luo Nan politely expressed his thanks and got off the car to head home. He only realized halfway there. When did he become accustomed to being addressed as Boss Luo? Luo Nan walked into the house. There was no one in the living room. Luo Nan called out and his uncle Mo Haihang responded from the kitchen. "Oh Luo Nan, wait a moment. The food needs to be reheated." Okay. It was already 8 o'clock in the evening. Dinner time had long passed. However, as long as his uncle was home, he would certainly reserve a portion for Luo Nan, the king of stomachs. Luo Nan first went to wash his face and used cold water to stimulate himself. When he returned to the living room, Mrs. Luo Shuqing was already sitting on the sofa in her home clothes. "Auntie." Luo Nan rushed to greet her. He was most afraid of this person in the family. Luo Shuqing had her head lowered as she fiddled with her wristband. Luo Nan's heart thumped when he saw this scene. He immediately bypassed the minefield and headed to the dining room. But he was still too late. A cold and clear voice came from behind him. "Did Moya call yet?" "Oh no. I haven't been in contact for the past 2 days. Maybe Mo Peng." "Where is he?" Luo Nan turned around. He didn't see the best shield, but this didn't prevent him from diverting the disaster. "He went crazy outside. I hope he'll be back before 9. Mrs. Luo Shuqing's attention shifted a bit, but she soon locked onto her target. "Has Moya confirmed the specific time she'll be returning to Xia City?" The words "return to Xia City" were remarkable. As the saying goes, no one knows a daughter better than a mother. Madame Luo Shuqing had already determined that even if her unfilial daughter returned from the music festival, she wouldn't return home for a while. After all, she would be gone for a month. Things had gotten out of hand. Luo Nan continued to play dumb. "I haven't been in contact for the past 2 days. At most, I'll look at her circle of friends. Won't she be back after the music festival ends?" Luo Shuqing raised her head to look at her nephew. In the end, she couldn't resist her doting heart. She sighed and didn't pursue the matter any further. "Let's go eat. If there's nothing going on at school, we'll adjust the time for supplementary lessons. It's not good to eat too late." Luo Nan responded vaguely and quickly sat at the dining table. His uncle just happened to deliver the sliced beef with a small pancake. The pancake was wrapped with beef and scallions. The texture was firm and crisp. It was very chewy and went well with the rice. Luo Nan was half serious and half fake in order to avoid trouble. He buried his head in the food and didn't give his mouth any time to rest. His uncle sat on the other side of the dining table and sighed, "It's fortunate that you're practicing martial arts. Otherwise, your body would be out of shape if you continued like this every day." This was a good topic. Luo Nan's mouth wasn't idle. He could only nod over and over. Aside from Mo Peng, no one in the family has ever been fat. If you have the ability, then feed that unfilial daughter into a pig. I want to see how she'll go wild in the outside world. Luo Shuqing was annoyed by being alone in the living room, so she came to the dining table. His uncle immediately shut his mouth and smiled, avoiding the frontal attack. Luo Shuqing knew that her husband had an impenetrable ability. Her gaze turned to a certain person who was the easiest to bully. Luo Nan hated that he couldn't stuff the entire beef pancake into his mouth. But he had eaten too quickly just now. The previous roll had already entered his stomach. Right now there was a gap and he couldn't avoid it. His brain heated up, and by some strange coincidence he self-destructed. Today, a friend's boss wants me to go work at her company. Chapter 346. Luo Nan regretted it the moment he spoke. Moya must have secretly placed a curse on him. That's why he would ignore the consequences and step forward to block the bullet. No matter how much he regretted it, he could no longer swallow the words he had spoken. The consequences of his actions were immediately apparent. His uncle and aunt's gazes were directed at him at the same time. They were puzzled at first, but then they became vigilant. Your friend? Boss? What do I want you to do? What kind of company is that? There was a sequence of questions, but the meaning behind them was the same. Luo Nan knew that he had poked a hornet's nest. He was unable to explain why his family's introverted otaku would suddenly attract the interest of a social company. He could only bite the bullet and avoid the question. I haven't agreed yet. I'm afraid he's just saying it. Luo Shuqing stared into her nephew's eyes. The question now is, why is this company interested in you? Why can't she be interested in me? Luo Nan forced himself to be thick-skinned. He was prepared to pester her endlessly at any time. Luo Shuqing wanted to say more, but Mo Haihang gestured for his wife to stop. He maintained his smile and said calmly, Let me ask, why didn't you agree? Is the pay not suitable or the time does not permit? Yes. Mo Haihang didn't wait for Luo Nan to finish speaking. Your cautious attitude is correct. Regardless of age, as long as there was a labor relationship, working hours and pay were very important. How much did they pay you? Luo Nan was stupefied when it came to the specifics. He stared blankly for a moment before replying, We haven't reached that step yet. If there's a need to talk later, you might as well ask your aunt to be your advisor. She's a senior HR officer in a big company, and she specializes in this. She's experienced in scamming people and getting scammed. Luo Nan buried his head in eating. He responded vaguely, Oh, okay. Luo Shuqing glared at her husband, but as a married couple for decades, she knew some tricks very well, so she immediately changed her words. Working and being independent is a good thing. What's the name of that company again? I can help you find out the bottom line first. Other things aside, you should be able to grasp the average salary. If you negotiate with them, you will be able to seize the initiative. She had been in the HR business for many years. In terms of human resources management, she had a wide network of contacts and was skilled in the business. He had already opened up a professional search software as he spoke. He could find all the official businesses of Xia City on it. The couple looked amiable on the outside, but in reality they were pressing him. Luo Nan's brain was no longer working in circles. He wasn't good at lying to begin with, so he began to leak out, I think she's called Blue something? Hidden Indigo Company? It should be an office. Luo Nan half buried his face into his rice bowl. Otherwise, the cold sweat on his forehead would be seen clearly. Now he knew why he was in such a difficult situation in just a month, and why he had made so many enemies. This impulse was too deadly. Luo Shuqing quickly found out the results. Hidden Indigo Firm. Oh, there's registration information and tax payment records. It's mainly engaged in legal consulting business. It seems to be fairly formal. What's the name of the boss who recruited you? Wu. I only know her surname is Wu. Wujiang? Luo Shuqing read out the name of the legal representative of the firm. For a moment, the restaurant was filled with awkwardness. Long live Her Majesty Empress Wu. Luo Nan let out a long breath. Now he had a handle. Wait, samurai? Why not just call her Wu Zetian? Mo Haihang tapped his fingers on the table and frowned. Of course, there were many unreliable parents in this world. There were all sorts of strange names for their children, but there were extremely few who would specifically use the name of a unique and unmatched character in history. More importantly, this violated the current laws and regulations. Not to mention anything else, It was impossible for the social authority department he worked in to pass such an application for information. But the current situation was that this Mrs. Wu Zhao had used this name in an imposing manner. Moreover, she had used this name to register an official office. Based on his years of experience working in the SEA, he could tell that Wu Zhao, this office, and the corresponding registration information were all fake from start to finish. It could even be said that she was making a mockery of public authority. Or she was a very powerful person who could openly violate certain social rules. Of course, she must be very willful. Mo Haihang was unable to immediately verify these judgments, nor did he say them out loud. His mind spun like lightning, but his face remained smiling as he asked, "She took the initiative to express interest in you. This is very good. This means that you have a skill that is useful to her business. What is it specifically?" "Yeah, what was it?" Luonan was a bit absent-minded. He held a cautious attitude toward Her Majesty Empress Wu's basis for recruiting him. It was hard not to be suspicious when he carried a treasure on him. He didn't have an answer right now, but he couldn't stop talking. He could only rack his brain and comb through his abilities on the surface. Fortunately, a flash of inspiration struck him before he suffocated to death. He combined today's experience and found a reason. "They appreciate my sketching ability." Sketching? Luonan's answer was more or less outside of the expectations of the two parents. They looked at each other once more. They knew that Luonan had a sketching ability. He could sketch a vivid and lifelike drawing in an extremely short amount of time. But what was the use of this toy? Luo Shuqing immediately asked, "What does the hidden indigo firm need this kind of employee for?" "It seems to be a detective or something. Nowadays, many people carry anti-surveillance equipment. Some things are hard to operate and it will arouse the other party's vigilance. They want to recruit someone like me to give it a try." "Private detective?" Luo Shuqing's brows locked tight. "This sort of job?" "Yeah. I also feel that this sort of job is a bit strange. It's just that I can't refuse them face to face because of my friend. I'll wait for the other side's enthusiasm to subside in 2 days. Then I'll refuse." Luonan finished speaking in a single breath and let out a long sigh of relief. He had finally made the connection, but he would certainly collapse if he continued speaking. He immediately swept the food off the table like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds. Then he stood up. "That's about it. Uncle and Auntie, don't worry. I won't run off into society. Oh, the materials for today's supplementary lessons should be sent over. There's also homework. I'm going upstairs." He didn't even tidy up the dishes after he finished speaking. He turned around and left. Luo Shuqing still wanted to call out to him, but Mo Haihang gestured for her to calm down. The two made eye contact, and Luo Shuqing discovered that her husband's attitude was extremely serious. Luonan went up to the second floor in a few steps and fled to his room. He locked the door and finally relaxed. He lay on the bed, swayed a few times, and then began to roll around while holding his head. "Luonan, you pig. Dumbass. Idiot." He muttered as he defiled himself to relieve the hatred in his heart. But soon he began to feel weak in his heart. His two elders should be pondering over his matter right now. His words were full of flaws. He shouldn't think of getting through this easily. For now he needed to do some detective work. Oh no, it should be the work of a spy. Yes, with his mental sensing ability, there were no secrets to the conversation between uncle and auntie. When the time came, he would design a plan to deal with suspicions. It shouldn't be hard to brush them off, right? Chapter 347. "Mr. Luo, are you looking for me?" Yuan asked through the hexier. Her voice was low and hoarse. She was probably in a rather tired state. Luo Nan grunted, unable to respond immediately. He remembered Bamboo Pole's example, and knew that Yuan was also under a lot of pressure. It was inevitable that he would feel a little embarrassed constantly troubling her. "Mr. Luo?" Yuan's tone was still questioning, but her attitude was still very calm. "It's like this. Just now Brother Bamboo Pole mentioned." Luonan did his best to make a long story short. He talked about how Bamboo Pole earned extra money and how he helped Her Majesty Empress Wu recruit him. In the end, he naturally asked for Yuan's opinion. Yuan didn't respond immediately. She was silent for approximately half a minute. When she opened her mouth again, she didn't rush to answer Luonan's question. Instead, she inquired about the details of the time, including the examples that Luonan was too embarrassed to elaborate on. She asked about them one by one. Luonan was basically forced by Yuan to recollect the situation at the time once more. He felt even more awkward. He felt like he was a villain who was trying to stir up trouble. Yuan didn't care about this. After thinking for a moment, she opened her mouth and said, "Mr. Luo, are you considering whether or not to join? Or are you considering Her Majesty Empress Wu's thoughts?" These words hit the nail on the head. Luo Nan had gone through this period of contemplation, and Yuan had forced him to recall. Luo Nan was more or less clear about his own thoughts. Why did he join the hidden indigo firm? In the past, Zhang Yingying had also introduced the firm to him. The main business of this firm was to provide services to the rich and powerful of Xia City. They looked for rich men to catch sheep, managed interpersonal relationships, made investments and so on. This wasn't the life Luo Nan wanted except for a generous income. Luo Nan didn't have anything to hide. He immediately responded, "I don't understand what Her Majesty Empress Wu is thinking." "Well, hold on. She doesn't seem to be particularly eager to recruit me." A flash of inspiration flashed through Luo Nan's mind as he spoke, and the meaning of the latter half of the sentence changed. Yuan declined to comment. "What's the reason?" "You know, a few days ago the firm did a business outsourcing. This model suits me very well. At least it's more suitable than working in the firm. If it wasn't for this matter and I'm in urgent need of money now, I might really join. But since there's a better way, it'll definitely affect the so-called recruitment." "Isn't that so?" Luo Nan was a bit lacking in confidence when he spoke to this point. He urgently needed to seek advice. Yuan replied, "There's no problem with the overall train of thought." "Really? There's only one thing that needs to be corrected." According to Her Majesty Empress Wu's temperament, the business opportunities you've obtained should be compensation. Luo Nan expressed his lack of understanding. Yuan explained to him, "According to what you've said, Bamboo Pole's evaluation of Her Majesty Empress Wu is quite appropriate. Her Majesty Empress Wu has always abided by the law and disregarded morality. She seems to not bother with trifles normally, but she is actually very strict, both to others and to herself." It wasn't just this time. In the past, Bamboo Pole had also mentioned this point in class, and had even given a few examples. But when Luo Nan thought of Zhang Yingying, he went a bit off track. He really couldn't imagine how that sister, with her flying and bouncing temperament, was able to survive under the pressure of her strict boss. It would be difficult to establish a relevant impression. But now that Yuan had said the same thing, he had no choice but to believe it. "Harsh it is. I don't want to go anymore. What does this have to do with compensation?" "Because of the headquarters." Yuan's words hit the nail on the head. "Headquarters took action against you after Her Majesty Empress Wu agreed to protect you from President Ouyang. The situation was critical at the time. Admittedly, Black Beetle was the reason behind it, but an oversight is an oversight. Her Majesty Empress Wu is harsh to herself and others. Mending the pen after the sheep is lost must be done. Otherwise, even if Yingying is different from ordinary people, it would be very difficult to obtain Her Majesty Empress Wu's agreement to give you a deal worth several million." Luo Nan suddenly realized, no wonder. Otherwise, it could be said that there was no such thing as meat pies falling from the sky in this world. Now the feeling of unease brought about by the generous business rewards vanished like smoke in thin air. So this was exchanged with his life. Of course, Her Majesty Empress Wu's principle of self-discipline and Zhang Yingying's care and concern were still engraved in his heart. And now, after Yuan explained the compensation, she changed the topic and entered the main topic. "As for this recruitment, it's just as you said. Her Majesty Empress Wu probably doesn't expect you to join the hidden indigo firm. She had Bamboo Pole deliver the message. She probably expressed her attitude more than anything else." "What attitude?" "Her Majesty Empress Wu is well known for pushing down the wall. She has devoted herself to forging a brand new social order these past few years, allowing ability users to seamlessly enter the secular society. Naturally, it is easier for young people to exert influence in promoting and putting her theories into practice. In fact, she is famous for her love of training young people with potential. Brother Bamboo Pole talked about this before." "Well, are you saying that Her Majesty Empress Wu is displaying her appreciation for me?" Yuan let out a rare chuckle. The word display is well used. Luo Nan's mind went in circles. "So you're saying that the so-called display isn't for me but for other people? If this wasn't the case, then why would Her Majesty Empress Wu send the message through Bamboo Pole? And why would Bamboo Pole ask you to consult others? This is to release public opinion, to expand its influence, and to declare its attitude to people with intentions. In this way, people like headquarters won't have to consider the factor of Her Majesty Empress Wu's deep involvement if they want to make a move against you. Bamboo Pole is quite right. Public and private matters are different in the end. Nothing is more ideal than balancing public and private matters. Luonan finally understood the twists and turns within. He let out a long sigh of relief, but he also had a bit of complex emotions. So you're saying that the so-called recruitment is just an empty title? I say. He Yuan's voice was gentle as she spoke softly. Mr. Luo shouldn't be unduly humble. Her Majesty Empress Wu is harsh on herself and others. Her standards are extremely high. If Mr. Luo isn't up to par, then she wouldn't even give you a glance. She wouldn't even put on this sort of attitude. To put it bluntly, this is an expression of goodwill. It's an investment for the future. That's enough, Sister Yuan. I'm not someone with a heart of glass. I know my own position. I have Her Majesty Empress Wu's explicit words to protect me. What's there to be dissatisfied about? Luonan responded with a brisk tone. After dispelling his doubts, he was really embarrassed to take up more of He Yuan's time. He immediately said, Sister Yuan, I'm relieved after you explain things. You still have things to do over there, right? Hurry up and do what you need to do. I'm doing homework and I still have evening classes. It's nothing. It's just some routine work. I've already finished dealing with it. But you've been arranging your homework tightly. Can you handle it? No problem. You don't mind, do you? Luonan suddenly recalled that he had repeated Bamboo Pole's example and evaluation to He Yuan. Those words weren't anything good. Of course, Luonan's question was really stupid. Mind what? Her Majesty Empress Wu is just taking the opportunity to knock me down a bit. Ha! Bamboo Pole certainly counted me in when he told you to consult others. Most of those words were said for me to hear. It's probably because I've been acting too hastily in the branch recently. Sister Yuan? Luonan didn't know what to say for a time. He knew that He Yuan was under enormous pressure from Bamboo Pole's evaluation. If another extraordinary were to express her opposition, then He Yuan's handling of matters in the future would become even more burdensome. He Yuan turned around to comfort him while he was worrying. You know your own position and so do I. Bamboo Pole said that my goal is much clearer than yours. Actually, what he said isn't correct. Your goal is equally clear. It's just that many aspects are involved in realizing it. It's too complicated between light and dark. It's not easy to start. Yes, that's the logic. He Yuan's words really spoke to the bottom of Luonan's heart. His goal, whether it was to clear his grandfather's name or to protect his mother's work of art, involved many levels and many powers. They were all intertwined with each other. He didn't have the skill to solve this problem. He didn't have the corresponding sharpness to cut through the Gordian knot. It was as if He Yuan could hear his thoughts. She said, since it's like this, I might as well say a cliché. Sharpening the knife will not delay the work of chopping wood. If you really don't know where to start, then just sharpen the knife. Wait until the blade is sharp and there will be a day when your worries will be severed. Yes, I know. Sister Yuan, I will definitely work hard. Luonan couldn't help feeling a bit embarrassed when he spoke to this point. Why did he sound like an elementary school student writing a pledge? Yuan didn't mind. She said softly, your mental ability to interfere with matter has just manifested. You don't know what to do. You must be careful. If you don't want to go to Bai Xinyan's place, there's no harm in going to Divine Yu Gym. They're quite brilliant at nurturing energy, solidifying the foundation, and cultivating the body. Yes, Gym Master Xiao is truly talented. Luonan spoke sincerely. Yuan paused for a moment. Then she suddenly asked, you're still cultivating the eye's orifice? Yeah. Gym Master Xiao said that the eye's orifice has just reached small success. It needs to be consolidated until yin and yang are connected from the outside. And then? Then you need to cultivate the ear orifice and the mouth orifice. At the very least, you need to cultivate the 3 essentials. Only then can you proceed to the next step. He Yuan gave a light grunt and said, the 3 essentials of the 9 orifice are to clear the internal organs, solidify the essence and energy, and purify the mind. These are the proper paths of cultivation. There's no harm in cultivating them seriously. But if it's just some bizarre talk or daydream, then you don't need to pay attention to it. Luonan didn't understand what she meant by daydream or daydream for a time. By the time he came back to his senses, He Yuan had already said good night to him and ended the communication. This was strange. Why did she suddenly say this? He Yuan seemed to be quite familiar with Gym Master Xiao. Luonan was puzzled. He faintly sensed something. A knock came from the door on the first floor. It was Mo Peng, who had had his fill of playing outside, casually entering the house. Only now did Luonan remember that he still needed to investigate the conversation between his aunt and uncle. But when his soul strength covered the area, the two elders were already lecturing their son in the living room. There was nothing for him to do for the time being. Luonan listened for a few minutes, but he didn't gain anything. He simply collected his mind and went to do his own things. He finished his homework and took out the basic physics exercises prepared by Worker Zhai. He began to ponder and tackle them. Right now his God gear and body gear were meshed together. His energy flow was dense and comprehensive. If he really put his mind to it, there were very few people who could reach his level of concentration. Soon 2 hours passed. It was already past 10 o'clock. Luonan stretched his back. He followed the Daoyin technique taught to him by Gym Master Xiu. He loosened his joints and relaxed them step by step. His muscles, bones and skin were wrapped around his body. For a time, muffled sounds rang out incessantly from his body. At the same time, a warm current enshrouded him. It was extremely comfortable. Chapter 348. Night sounds. Luonan put everything down and got onto the bed. He stripped down to his underpants, adjusted his breathing, and began his night training. A thin layer of sweat covered his body after half an hour of breathing guidance, but the state of his body and mind had already recovered to their peak. The flame of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice flickered within his brain. Luonan's thoughts stirred, and the heart lantern flickered, sending the warm light into his internal organs. Gym Master Xiu once said that after the cultivation of the eye's orifice reached small success, the inner vision would be like the sun and moon illuminating the mountains and rivers. Even if one could not truly see through the wondrous attainments of life without missing anything, one could still pierce through the clouds and break through the mist. Luonan saw that the structure of his internal organs had the shape of a rampart under the spiritual light of his internal vision. It was like a high cliff and deep valley with towering rocks. The disorderly layout was vague. He didn't care about this. He just merged his mind with his eyes. The sun and moon rotated and shone down, fixing on the gate of life in his spine. He burned and refined his essence energy, gradually pouring it into the bottom of the perineum. When the yang energy was full, it naturally surged up and seeped into his internal organs. This time it was like water sprinkling on lava. Vital energy hissed and boiled. It was like roiling clouds, changing shape in myriad ways. Luonan felt such a sign when he burned and refined his essence energy. After a moment of shock, he was delighted. Burning the pill furnace, filling the mountain with smoke. The technique of transforming essence into qi has already reached its peak. The next step is to reach the peak of Kunlun and then open up a field of blessings. No wonder even Master Lien said that we should wait for the torrent to pour down and overflow before making a judgment. The time is right and it's clearly today. It must be known that Luonan's body and soul were originally imbalanced. He had no choice but to use all the vital energy in his body to nourish the eye's orifice, forming a body gear. Only then did he have the opportunity to borrow the majestic and vast power of the God gear. If he hadn't comprehended the coupling technique, he might have had to toss and turn for several months. He might even have had to undergo some strengthening surgery in order to maintain that fragile balance. But things in this world always move in the opposite direction when pushed to the extreme. Luonan received his mother's blessing, comprehended the coupling technique, and crossed the most difficult juncture. The crisis transformed and the corresponding benefits were greater. Ordinary people relied on time and effort to cultivate the internal refinement technique. If one wanted to reach the level of burning the pill furnace and filling the mountains with clouds, it was possible to cultivate for 7 days, 8 days, 9 days, or even 100 days, a year, or even 3 years. But Luonan was here. The power of formatting theory was far too great, and the glacial ocean hung high. Even if he only poured a little and interfered, he would still advance bravely. Ever since the heart lantern of the eye's orifice had broken the boundaries of interference, it had become unstoppable in the short 7 days. With just a few thoughts flashing through his mind, clouds gathered in the middle of his chest and abdomen. They were dyed with 5 different colors. Especially where his liver and gallbladder were, the green aura was the thickest. According to the classical theory of the East, the eye's orifice was like the mouth of a spring with its source below. The Nan? Oh. Yang. Ancient. The mechanism affected the entire body, including the liver, gallbladder, eyes, fingers, and tendons. It seemed to be bouncing around, but it was actually all connected in one breath. This was what Gym Master Shio meant when he said, "The body is like a mountain range densely planted with soil. The breath is like flowing water, twisting and turning. My eye's orifice reservoir is finally connected to the source. Is flowing water." Earlier, Luo Nan had exhausted all of his vital energy to open the eye's orifice, barely able to withstand the terrifying pressure of the God Wheel. The iceberg ocean continued to pour soul power into his eye's orifice. His eye's orifice was just like a reservoir with limited capacity. Even with the coupling art, the continuous impacts caused his pupils to crack with electricity. But now the situation was different. The eye's aperture connected the qi and blood of the liver and gallbladder, and it could also circulate to the fascia of the whole body. From there, the viscera, muscles, bones, skin, and hair could all be digested one by one, and the load capacity would increase dramatically. It would truly become the body chakra, constantly rotating. In this way, it could be said that the inside was connected to the outside, and the bitterness was over before the sweetness came. Just the power of the divine wheel's nourishment alone was enough for him to enjoy for a while. It was midnight, the time when the qi in the liver flowed. After the pleasantly surprised mood passed, Luo Nan suppressed his feelings of joy and calmed his mind. He adjusted the flow of energy more and more carefully, wanting to complete the task. 2 hours passed in the blink of an eye. Luo Nan waited for the yin and yang of the liver and gallbladder to automatically adjust the fire of the heart, the water of the kidneys, and the energy to circulate. Then Luo Nan woke up. He opened his eyes and his thoughts stirred. He had his own response, and he knew that it was around 3 in the morning. Right now he was overflowing with energy and his mind was healthy and refreshed. It was no longer suitable for him to sleep, but this wasn't his usual rhythm of work and rest. Just as he was mulling over what he should do, his mind stirred. Someone was talking nearby and his name was mentioned. With the level of Luo Nan's mental senses, he could pry into the information of all living beings within a radius of several kilometers. It was just that this information was far too complex, and it had the effect of accelerating the growth of his soul strength. It increased the burden, so Luo Nan normally maintained the radius of his mental senses at around 10 meters. Most of the time he was in a standby state, only reacting to evil thoughts, ominous intents and other dangers. But perhaps it was because his cultivation had just advanced, but the sensitivity of his mental senses had increased by a large margin. The way it appeared was quite different from before. His mind was like a calm lake reflecting several stars. It was like the reflection of the distant starry sky. Then the corresponding information joined together and transformed, forming an even more concrete figure. The words they exchanged were all reflected in the lake of his mind. Oh, it's aunt and uncle. That's right. Who else could it be? The two elders were in their bedroom. They leaned side by side against the headboard, conversing in low voices. It could be seen that they hadn't slept at all last night. They had been conversing all this time. Though Luo Nan possessed inconceivable mental senses, he normally wouldn't go so far as to eavesdrop. He just heard his own name and he did that stupid thing at night. He couldn't help but feel a bit guilty and he was even more curious. I'll eavesdrop just once. Tonight. Luo Nan found an excuse for himself, and he truly used his heart to sense. This time he was like an incorporeal specter, lurking in his aunt and uncle's bedroom. He could hear and see, and it was as if he was there in person. Luo Nan was already unable to recall what they had said before, but the first words that truly entered his ears caused his mind to be stimulated. Could it be that Dad or perhaps Zhongheng's friends have come to Xia City? They've been in the wilderness for 20 years. They've gone against civilization and they're on sensitive projects. It's already good enough that they haven't become enemies. Why would they come over? The one speaking in front was his aunt Luo Shuqing. The dad she spoke of was naturally Luo Nan's grandfather Luo Yuandao. Zhongheng was Luo Nan's father Luo Zhongheng. From Luo Nan's perspective, these two names were the ones he cared about the most, even though the direction of his emotions were quite different. He immediately paid 120% of his attention. Luo Shuqing was a bit dissatisfied when she heard her husband's response. Don't play dumb. You know who I'm talking about. Yes, I know. But I checked the entry and exit records of the airport. Yan Yonghua has been flying back and forth across the Pacific Ocean recently. He's been to Luo City at least 5 or 6 times. The trouble he's gotten into clearly comes from within Quantum Corporation. Do you think they have influence over Quantum Corporation? They? Who was they? Was it related to his grandfather and father? Luonan didn't hear it, but he knew that the topic these two elders were talking about right now involved their family friend, Yen Yonghua. It made sense. Back then, Yen Yonghua had humiliated his family in front of everyone at the restaurant. He had vowed in all sincerity that he would take back the reputation of his old man, Yen Hong. Whether or not Yen Yonghua's words were reasonable, the endorsement of Quantum Corporation really did give people a lot of pressure. A few days passed and this brother suddenly vanished without a trace. It was hard not to be suspicious of his anticlimactic ending. Luonan didn't completely understand the ins and outs of this matter, but compared to other more important matters, he didn't have the mind to ponder over these small details. But from the perspective of his aunt and uncle, the tiger skin of Quantum Corporation was still quite a deterrent to the secular world. Even if their family was considered a relatively wealthy middle-class family, they weren't on the same level when compared to a capital giant like Quantum Corporation. If things didn't go well, their family would be ruined. Luonan couldn't help but feel a bit ashamed when he thought of this. His aunt and uncle had been shouldering such a large amount of pressure for the past month, but they had never mentioned it to him. He was quite careless. He had forgotten about it many times. What method should he think of to appease his two elders? Luonan was pondering over this matter when he heard his aunt sneer, "Are you looking down on vagrants? I, as an HR employee, know that vagrants have been returning to the city with great momentum in recent years. A portion of them erased their criminal records and transformed into big bosses. This isn't just one or two examples." His uncle sighed. "Then you're counting on a former vagrant boss who erased his criminal record to come out and help?" "I didn't say that." His uncle pulled open the bedside table and took out an electronic cigarette that had been sealed for a long time. He wanted to put it in his mouth, but he stopped and held it in his hand. "I'd rather they stay in the wilderness forever. These people are used to the law of the jungle and religion is involved. There has never been a lack of madmen and ambitious people. The old man is still alive. He's a symbol at the very least. He's a constraint. I don't think they'll talk reason with us once the situation changes. If they join forces with the powers in the city, I'm afraid things will get even more lively." Luo Shuqing was quite vigilant. "They're looking for you again? They haven't met, but they've called a few times. They're asking for help in changing data and the like. Whether they succeed or not, they're very polite." "You're right. They're inclined to enter the city." The focus of Luo Shuqing's attention had already changed. "What about Nan? Did they make contact with Nan? Do you mean to say that Wu Jiang?" His uncle finally put the electronic cigarette in his mouth. The vapor evaporated and he sighed. "I don't know. I really don't know." The husband and wife were no longer in the mood to talk in the bedroom. They just endured like this, letting the pressure of silence slowly accumulate. Luonan's telepathic thoughts lingered for a few minutes before he felt very oppressed. He quietly withdrew. Luonan was stupefied after his senses withdrew. His aunt and uncle had guessed Her Majesty Empress Wu's origins due to problems with the source of their information, but their direction was completely wrong. But the information within their words made Luonan understand that in this world, in a certain corner of the boundless wilderness, there were some people who possessed a strange and intimate relationship with his grandfather and father. The wilderness? Vagrants? All right, he suddenly pulled out another thread. It seemed to be very far away, but it seemed to be very heavy behind it. Luonan lay on his bed and looked at the ceiling. His leisurely mood of looking for trouble instantly transformed into a myriad of thoughts, a feeling of impatience and depression. There were too many things he needed to do, but it was hard to accomplish them. He thought about it and realized that the little bit of internal refinement he had just obtained was nothing to be happy about. Chapter 349. Luonan's mind was still a mess even after being in a daze for a long time. The hour hand was already pointing to 4 o'clock. Another hour passed unknowingly. Luonan was in a bad mood. His mind was originally in an extremely clear state, but now it had been stirred into a pot of porridge. This won't do. Luonan tried to sever his terrible state of mind. He thought of He Yuan's teachings and immediately murmured, "Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood. Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood. Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood." He recited this proverb over a dozen times like a chant, forcefully replacing his chaotic thoughts. In the end he was a bit tired. Luonan used the back of his hand to press his forehead. His state of mind gradually calmed down. He didn't have any new experiences, but his turbid thoughts gradually became clear. Sister Yuan's incantation was quite considerate. Actually, he recited the incantation 1,000 times and thought of 10,000 countermeasures. In the end, it all boiled down to one sentence. You're not an extraordinary. In recent months, he had followed He Yuan to grasp the world order in and out of the psychic wave network. He had followed Bamboo Pole to learn the notes of the most important people in the world. Wasn't this principle what he had learned? To put it bluntly, the inner world was a simple society built by a group of inhumans who had awakened their abilities. Even though they were influenced by the secular world, money, resources, and connections played a large role. In the end, personal strength was still the most important. Why did Bamboo Pole want him to rely on Her Majesty Empress Wu? It was because Her Majesty Empress Wu was an extraordinary. Her strength was profound, her resources were abundant, and she was revered by others. She could handle matters that Luonan was unable to handle, and she could solve problems that Luonan was unable to solve. In this sense, Her Majesty Empress Wu could be swapped with any other extraordinary. The result would be the same. At most, the difference would be whether or not they were easy to serve. Of course, if Luonan himself was an extraordinary, then there would be no need for a swap. Most things would be impossible to happen. Even if they did happen, they would quickly dissolve. This was the special status of extraordinaries. If Luonan could solve it himself, he naturally wouldn't want to do it for someone else. But the reality was that he was still far from being an extraordinary. Right now, he could barely be considered a blunt blade. He needed to grind the blade to an unstoppable edge, and he needed to smash a lot of hard work. He Yuan used the proverb, "Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood," to advise him. She was mostly worried that Luonan would lose his patience and confidence due to the difficult and tedious process. Luonan wasn't that frivolous and useless, but it would be a lie to say that he was extremely patient. He was willing to put in blood, sweat, and tears for the sharpening knife. No matter how hard it was, he could support it. But if this process was a clumsy, slow, and meticulous process, he would not be able to stand it. Her grandfather, who was on the verge of death, could not wait any longer, and neither could the ferocious enemy. He didn't want to leave behind irreparable regrets, and he didn't want his head to be chopped off by a powerful enemy before he succeeded. Harder, faster. This was the cultivation rhythm that Luonan hoped for. To do this, he could only rely on two things. One was formatting theory and the corresponding coupling method. The other was the internal cultivation method that Gym Master Xiao had imparted to him, which was to nurture one's essence and qi. The latter was personally guided by Hall Master Xiao, so the route was clear and orderly. There was no need to worry about making a mistake, making it the most efficient. However, this kind of internal refinement technique, be it the breathing or the opening of acupoints, was very particular about fire control and could not be rash. Just like this moment. Luonan had just brought the eye's orifice to perfection, and it was no longer suitable for him to make hasty movements. He needed to calm down for several days before planning his next move. Then, there was only one thing left for him to figure out and achieve some results. Formatting theory. Luonan knew very well that the astonishing progress of his internal refinement cultivation was due to the grinding and influence of formatting theory, transforming the powerful potential energy of the vast glacial ocean. Now that the cultivation of the eye's orifice was complete, he still needed to rely on formatting theory for the next step of cultivation. No matter how one looked at it, formatting theory was his foundation. He couldn't slack off in the related research. And there was a state that was the most suitable for pondering over formatting theory. The time was 4:10. Luonan looked at his daily schedule through the hexayear. There was still around an hour before the normal morning exercise time. Luonan estimated the time limit, but he didn't get up. He just squinted his eyes and silently cried out, "Come out." The void chains trembled and a pulling force rose out of thin air. It pulled his soul out of his body with a jolt. Yes, what Luonan needed to do was to go into an out-of-body state. Formatting theory itself was flawed, and the hidden dangers were great. The unconventional increase in soul strength led to an imbalance between body and soul. And the time when the increase was the fiercest was often when the soul was in an out-of-body state. Ever since the incident at Frost River Reality, Luonan's situation with the imbalance between body and soul had reached a critical level. He had no choice but to seal this method and not use it again. But was formatting theory still formatting theory if it couldn't increase soul strength? Luonan had inherited his grandfather's theory. He had the desire to reform and perfect it. This was a process of constant trial and error. How could he make mistakes? Naturally, he had to make a mistake in order to correct it. In the past, Luonan's body and soul were imbalanced. His condition was critical and he lost the space to make mistakes. But now his cultivation had advanced, and his body gear was constantly rotating. His foundation had become more solid, and his ability to deal with risks had greatly increased. Some things needed to be put on the agenda. If he didn't act now, would he have to wait for death to come? Would he have to close his eyes and wait for death? Luonan didn't want to close his eyes and wait for death. He wanted to open his eyes and look at the world. He wanted to use the perspective of formatting theory to make scientific judgments and then use practice to verify the results. He pushed forward layer by layer like this, using the greatest effort and the fastest speed to climb to the level of extraordinary. I can do it. I must do it. Luonan's conviction gradually became clear. The soul body floating outside his body was like a fish. It gently swayed and submerged into the boundless and boundless sea of the mind. The range of his senses instantly expanded tenfold. 100-fold. His thoughts stirred slightly, and he looked at his seemingly sleeping fleshly body. He also swept his gaze over his silent and sleepless elder. His soul body then flashed and submerged into the void. Without the burden of his fleshly body, the movement speed of his soul body only depended on the method and technique he used to interfere with space. It wasn't strange for him to travel several kilometers with a single thought. In the blink of an eye, Luonan was far away from the community he was in. He went deep into the depths of the metropolis that was about to wake up. His mind wandered through the metropolis. The feeling of familiarity and strangeness increased layer by layer. In the past, every time Luonan's soul left his body, it was always during critical and pressing moments. It was rare for him to purely observe and feel like this. The life sketches of all living beings appeared one after another within the range of his senses. Together, they formed a deep starry sky that continued to expand. The living starry sky and the true night sky interweaved to form a labyrinth on the mental and material planes. There might even be unknown treasures hidden within. This was an experience that was hard to come by under normal circumstances. Luonan wasn't bewitched by the labyrinth. He quickly confirmed his direction and moved like a ghost in the night. He was hidden and then disappeared, but he advanced in a straight line. He didn't avoid tall buildings, flying cars, or light rails. He passed right through them. It was 4:20 in the morning. A mere 10 minutes later, Luonan's soul body was already flying above the Pingjiang district. The campus of Acumen College and the towering buildings of Cloud City Water Village entered the range of his senses. Chapter 350. Luonan was shocked after confirming the time. His aunt's house was approximately 80 kilometers away from Acumen College. Given the city's speed limit, the flying car would arrive in an hour. He had only spent 10 minutes just now. In other words, the flying speed of his soul body was close to 500 kilometers per hour. Luonan had gotten a rough sense of the flying speed of his soul when he first realized the out-of-body state. He just felt that it was fast, but he never expected it to be this fast. It must be known that he was just casually flying. He was far from reaching his limits. It was completely possible for him to increase his speed by a large margin if he truly exerted his strength. Perhaps it was catalyzed by his progress during this period of time? The radius of the main city area of Xia City and the satellite cities was no more than 300 to 400 kilometers. In other words, he could easily reach any location in Xia City within an hour. It was also possible for him to travel a full circle in Xia City in a single night. He could even travel several thousand kilometers. This was the marvels of the out-of-body state. Luonan just didn't know if there would be any problems with the order frame formed by the God Gear and Body Gear if his soul body was too far away. Luonan immediately slowed down the flying speed of his soul. He divided a bit of his mental energy to sense the changes in his fleshly body 80 kilometers away. The out-of-body state had quite a large effect on the order frame of Luonan's body and soul. The pressure of soul strength on his body was practically zero, but it had also separated from the external neuron. It was no longer the thick and orderly structure of a vast ocean of icebergs. The God Gear didn't live up to its name. Luonan tried to activate the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, but there was no response. Only now was he convinced that a corresponding material carrier was needed in order to effectively interfere with reality on the mental plane. It was just like Luonan's order frame. No matter how strong the God Gear was, it was useless without the coordination of the Body Gear. Luonan couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. This way the actual use of the out-of-body state was rather limited. He needed to prepare for a rainy day. He needed to make a few more human-faced arachnids for backup before the Wraith sign returned. Luo Nan pondered over this matter, but he had some doubts. Were mentally enhanced ability users like Old Man Yu and Mr. Bai people who undoubtedly possessed the ability of out-of-body state? Were their out-of-body states the same? If not, how did they display their abilities normally? He thought left and right, but he was unable to grasp the gist of it. He wanted to give He Yuan a suggestion to add an out-of-body state application course. In any case, it was impossible to solve this problem tonight. Luo Nan calmed his mind, discarding the useless distracting thoughts. His soul body flickered, and when it reappeared, he was already in the air above the buildings of Cloud City Water Village. He locked onto the observation platform above Ocean Sky Cloud City, and he floated down. At 4 o'clock in the morning, there would naturally be no one on the observation deck. It was cold and silent. Though Luo Nan's soul strength did not affect the material plane, it collided with the consciousness of a living being on the mental plane. In the central crystal pillar of Ocean Sky Cloud City, the mutant devil ray that was originally suspended in the water and resting suddenly became excited. Its huge flat body swayed, and as it spun in the air habitually, it was like a huge drill that was rapidly moving upwards. It rapidly advanced towards the top of the crystal pillar, where the heavenly ocean lake was located on the observation deck. Since there was such a ferocious creature entrenched here, Fairsky Cloud couldn't let his guard down. Every night there were professionals on duty. Inside and outside the crystal pillar, there were also different types of surveillance cameras at work. As soon as the devil ray moved, its special posture triggered the alarm of the surveillance system. Groans could be heard everywhere in the building's central control room. This monster is going crazy again. It's hundreds of thousands just for one round of trouble. Hurry up and release the baffle. The so-called baffle was a temporary defensive device installed by Cloud City Water Village after the devil ray smashed through the tempered glass at the bottom of the heavenly ocean lake. It had no other use than to prevent the devil ray from smashing a huge hole in the heavenly ocean lake. Luo Nan could feel the chaos within the building. He felt quite embarrassed, so he used psychic waves to support himself and pacify the devil ray's restless emotions. The devil ray's intelligence was passable. It had once been suppressed by the high-imitation human-faced arachnid, but under Luo Nan's control, it felt all sorts of novel, interesting and extremely powerful states. As a result, it was both respectful and fearful of Luo Nan's special psychic wave frequency. Right now, it was already ranked as a staff member of the societal format diagram. According to the definition of the order, it could be called a believer or a follower. Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts descended, and the devil ray didn't dare to resist. It immediately stopped its momentum and turned its body. It saw the fish and shrimps that were fleeing in all directions, alarmed by its actions. It immediately swallowed a bunch of them and let out some blood over at Fairsky Cloud City. There was no need to mention just how great of a loss the devil ray, which had woken up in the middle of the night, would bring to the relevant parties. Luo Nan's soul body stayed on the viewing platform, observing the wetland jungle to the north of Acumen College. He remained motionless for a long time. There was gear within the jungle, but the viewing platform was over a dozen kilometers away from the wetland jungle. The sky was dark and silent, making it difficult for ordinary people to see it. Luo Nan could see it. A distance of over a dozen kilometers had already far exceeded the limits of Luo Nan's mental senses when his body and soul were one. Back then he had used the coupling of the God Gear and Body Gear to stimulate the heart lantern of the eye's orifice to rub his psychic light and illuminate the earth below. Only then was he able to bring gear within the jungle into his clairvoyance. Now that his mind had wandered to this point, the coupling of the God Gear and Body Gear was no longer possible. However, after his out-of-body state, the range of his senses had increased explosively by 10 times. He was able to see clearly under pure observation. The problem was that no matter how much he observed, it was hard to trigger the wondrous sensation of gear being the eye of heaven and earth, the universe grand format. This result was not unexpected at all. From the moment Luo Nan's heart lantern illuminated gear, he truly understood that the wondrous aspects contained within gear could not be seen by the naked eye. Mental senses could not illuminate it clearly. Only the two modes of sight and mental senses, through coupling, could cross and grind each other. Only then could one touch the reality behind the surface and determine how the law and order operated, transformed, and nurtured within the void of heaven and earth. Pure mental senses were still lacking in meaning. If it were possible, Luonan obviously wished to truly go to the viewing platform and observe gear with clairvoyance day and night. He wanted to feel and comprehend the wondrous aspects within. But this week, whether it was the viewing platform or the interior of gear, there were demonic shadows flickering one after another. It was a bad mood. Whatever. Let's just get closer and observe. Luonan's out-of-body state of mind had absolutely not chosen this place on a whim. He had a clear goal and plan. His soul body flew away from Ocean Sky Cloud City, and with another thought, he shifted to the wetland jungle. Gear was right in front of him. Right now, the lights within the building were completely extinguished. The pitch-black cave was completely devoid of people. Entering this place at this time and in this sort of situation required a bit of courage. Well, if someone really did come, Luonan did not mind testing the quality of this fellow. Unfortunately, there was no one. Luonan's soul body passed through the wall and entered the interior of gear. His mental senses naturally covered every space and every nook and cranny of the 12 floors, leaving nothing out. He could do all of this when his soul and body were one. He could do it even better because he had the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, which was more suited to the environment of gear. But it was still the same old saying, there were people in front of him and there were eyes behind his head. He could not act willfully. Only when his internal refinement was successful and he reckoned that he could resist the pressure of the explosive increase in his soul strength could this matter be accomplished. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.